later today. You can see the shocking video at 680news.com. 680's Michelle Mackey is following the story and has the latest. Michelle.
Michelle, we now know 102 residents are safe. 35 of them pulled from the rubble. However, at least one person is dead and 99 remain missing following the condo collapse and sent residents and vacationers running for their lives, including Gabe Nair, who tells ABC he narrowly escaped.
It was nothing but just white, thick cloud of dust, and it was brutal.
So you had that moldy drywall and that sandy concrete, didn't you? Hurricane sand, get it, sandy concrete. Motherfucker, they want FEMA for this shit.
Collapsed around 1:30 this morning, and the director of Miami-Dade Police says rescuers
I was
not
farting right around there, smoking a blunt. I swear to God, I didn't mean.
In there with their search team, with their dogs. It's a very dangerous site right now. I'm not a fireman, but what I know from listening to the briefings, it's very unstable, very dangerous, and those firemen are very brave to go in that role and doing everything they can.
The cause of the collapse remains under investigation. Reporting live, I'm Michelle Mackey.
Here at Bell News Radio 680 News, many business owners are making plans for reopening after the province announced it's moving into step 2 days early. 680's Richard Souther has more announcement from the federal government.
It's official. Dr. David Williams says step 2 is starting June 30th, next Wednesday, 2 days ahead of schedule.
That's to your credit. That's for the vaccine. That's what you've done when you turned out. People are very excited to be able to get haircuts again. For the first time in a long time, you can gather indoors with up to
why you abandoned this, but it's
not necessarily from your household. Barbers and hair salons will be able to open at 25% capacity. He said non-essential retail can allow more people in. Indoor religious ceremonies can open, as can outdoor sports facilities. They can allow fans in 25% capacity. Well, when are we moving to step 3? We've already met the vaccination requirements for that.
This is the top news at the bottom of the hour, eh?
Welcome back to Counterpoint, brought to you by Pizzaville on Global News Radio.
8:39. A little bit off kilter here with our timing tonight, but nonetheless, had lots to talk about. We've got round 2 of Counterpoint, brought to you by our friends over at Pizzaville.
What happens to salt? You don't have a proper
or Pizzaville.ca. We've got Michael Tubb and Dan McTagg waking. Joining us here tonight. I don't know what I'm thinking. I want to talk about this a little bit because it's not getting a lot of attention. But the Liberal government's introduced a Bill C-36 today. It's sold as protecting Canadians from online hate speech, insisting it's committed to the legislation despite announcing it, the day after the House rose for summer break. This would amend the Human Rights Act, an amended version of a controversial section that was repealed back in 2013. And this proposes, Dan, to implement free speech tribunals that can issue things like house arrest, $70,000 fines, anything for internet publishers, bloggers,
USDA organic, but that's horse meat in the fucking
break it down. It basically would give people the permission to go after anybody who has had hurt feelings. They can go after them, whether it's on Islamophobia or trans rights.
3 years ago, the fucking London police, UK, was telling people that if anybody hurts your feelings or leaves you upset, you should call us. Why?
To the tribunals. I mean, it's troublesome, to say the least.
Well, you're going to create a cottage industry for frivolous and vexatious claims.
That's why it was repealed.
There you go. I mean, look, the Liberals have no intention of having people ask questions on Bill C-10 or any other bad piece of legislation they've been able to ram through. This is a distraction. It's a little bit like the
just some subtle vehicle advertising.
Where you throw a big explosion into an oil well to stop the thing from gushing, and the distraction is enough to really stifle everything else. So I think this is not just zany and loony without basis and merit, but it's really designed for the Liberals to use any attempt to try to say, well, anything that they deem or anyone else happens to deem as hateful, even if it happens to be very much free speech and very much opinion and not hurtful. If you're going to have justices and tribunals and $70,000 fines being issued writ large, you can expect that the democracy in this country is gone. Of course, it just goes hand in hand with what the Prime Minister is doing, the executive powers to take Parliament to court to shut and stifle parliamentarians as well. But Canadians have got to understand one thing. This man he doesn't even act as Prime Minister. He thinks he's more of an emperor. And unfortunately,
he's a drama teacher.
Now, and I say that as a
Liberal with
acting
30 years experience in that
one great party.
It really is quite
Teaching
staggering.
the students a lesson right now.
Normally, Michael, this guy,
People, everything they want.
Let's just pretend it was Stephen Harper doing this. I mean, there would literally be people flipping out. This would be wall-to-wall news coverage. But some of the things that have been pulled this week, to Dan's point, of taking the House Speaker to court to seal records about Winnipeg Lab, Bill C-10 being rammed through without debate, and then you get this bill, C-36, which, again, is all about stifling opinion and things you don't like. It's not just draconian. It is not, and it's not normal. It's like what you would expect out of Russia.
Yeah, it's or China, exactly. No, it's awful. If my old friend and boss Stephen Harper was doing something like this, I would be one of the loudest going against it. I dislike things like this.
That's convenient to say now.
I'm a near.
Well, that's because none of your stuff would get printed. Never mind mine.
No, absolutely not. A lot of us would not. No, I'm a near advocate for free speech, and this is not something I believe in at all. And whenever government intervenes on something on this, it always gets worse because government cannot interpret people's feelings. They cannot figure out what people are necessarily, if they feel hurt about a certain statement or otherwise. I mean, look at it directly, very quickly. You know, it would narrowly define hatred, according to speech from the National Post, to mean, quote, the emotion that involves detestation or vilification, quote, that is,
put hot dogs in the freezer, you're a weirdo.
Dislike or disdain. By definition, for God. Exactly. That is insane.
Like I'm doomed. I am doomed. Doomed.
I'm retired. I'm done. That's the end of this. All three of us will be done. They might as well just pull the plug. Glenn, want to do it now? It's terrible. I cannot believe things like this. But you know what? Based on the fact that this is the government that had tried to introduce Bill C-10 and throw in the online component quietly, we shouldn't be shocked they're doing this. I hope this thing, though, goes down hard.
I thought Bill C-10 was about Indian status cards.
System of legislation because the Senate will never allow something like this to go through.
No, I know, but they can campaign on it. It'll sound good, like they're against hate. People will be like, "That's so great! Oh wow!"
The Prime Minister who does brown face and black face.
Draconian it is. All right, guys.
Anti-racist.
I am so heavy tonight, and I'm so up against the clock. I had so many other things I wanted to talk about, but I'm just out of time.
It was a great evening. Thanks, Alex. Take care, Michael.
I appreciate it. We'll continue talking. Don't worry. That is Michael Tobin, Damick Tag. What's wrong with me tonight? Joining me here tonight. I keep saying waking up. It comes into my head. With us here tonight for round 2 of Counterpoint, brought to you by our friends over at Pizzaville. When we come back, talk about Britney Spears.
Well, I guess we're done with this part of the show, aren't we?
She's, I interviewed her once upon a time, and now she's breaking her silence on her conservatorship. We'll talk about that when we go off point in just a second. Stay with us here on Point. This is Global News Radio.
So I know what all this trust in state laws type shit is. The fuck's this conservative?
Ongoing crash investigation and cleanup on the southbound 400, so it's still closed from Finch to
Oh,
the
we still didn't hear that
401.
soundbite, eh?
Finch, no access either.
Just that impact must have been just brutal.
And even the Finch on ramp all closed because of that. And now there is a delay on the south.
With the members of the public that
closure from about the 407 to the Finch ramp. So make sure you take a
they cannot identify what, not the police, but the people standing there. So they cannot identify what type of car that was.
We got a new collision in the Newmarket region, and there are reports that lanes
Stop
are blocked
looking at
in
me.
both directions. The left lane, northbound and southbound on
hang
the
this somewhere
404,
else.
blocked up just north of Aurora Road. So again, a delay in both directions through here. Right now, the big thrill sales events get up to $4,000 standard rate finance cash on select 2021 Nissan models. Get your thrills at Nissan.ca. I'm Amari Urbanovich, Global News Radio 640 Toronto. Traffic.
We're going to make your windows twinkle.
We're going to make your gutters sparkle.
We're going to make your driveways, decks, and sidewalks glow.
I wasn't expecting it to start working so fast.
Oh, those gutters are going to flow.
Shack Shine washes windows.
Shack Shine cleans
Fuck
gutters.
you. Shack Shine power washes driveways, decks, and sidewalks.
And boy, oh boy.
And it runs into the gutter and mixes with the deuterium, and then the dog shit, and then little old ladies walk through it, and they develop little old lady dog shit, uranium SARS, that make the whole neighborhood get sick.
I'm Dean Young, and every Sunday night, I talk to the biggest names in comedy.
But they do not whatsoever tell jokes. No, there's no humor.
Stand-up, sketch, and improv.
Hey, Dino, did you know I took improv?
Yeah, you remind me every week, Vince.
Yes, and?
Maybe you know us, maybe you don't, but you've definitely heard of our guests.
How you doing? This is Kevin Hart from Illinois.
Sean Cullen, Trevor Wilson.
You the top too, right at the top.
Et j'ai dit non, ça va, je vais marcher. Et si vous voyez ceux que j'aime en chemin, dites-leur que je n'ai plus de peine et que je ne suis plus très loin. Et si vous voyez ceux que j'aime en chemin, dites-leur que je n'ai plus de peine et que je ne suis plus très loin.
Vous pouvez retrouver cette entrevue de René au Miroir avec le chanteur Émile Bilodeau et les autres grands entretiens en direct ou en rattrapage sur l'application ici Radio-Canada Première et sur notre site web.
D'un coup, le vent était fort et puis le temps était gris.
Vous avez déjà rêvé d'être politicien. Oui. Bon, d'entrer en politique, comme on rentre en politique. Oui, mais reste que ça dépend de par quel bout de la lorgnette on regarde cet univers-là. Félix Leclerc est dans une chanson absolument formidable qui s'appelait Attends-moi, petit gars. Oui. Il disait, bon, quand la veille des élections. Il s'appelait Mon garçon sort.
Le lendemain, de raison, il avait oublié ton nom. C'est génial.
Mais est-ce que ça
Yeah, we'll chase a hangover with a Caesar. And yes, that's with clam juice. We'll do deep fried turducken. We'll do hot pot, then top a casserole with hot dogs. Bring it. Because we are the ultimate party potluck. These are the foods we all love.
We make our white Russians with bagged milk, motherfucker.
680 News Time, 8:48.
A stretch of the southbound 400 remains shut down from Finch to the 401 following a deadly multi-vehicle crash around 7 o'clock this morning. Provincial police say a 30-year-old from Richmond Hill was killed when a tractor-trailer hit the back of a vehicle that was slowing down in traffic.
Stop it, don't slow down on that road.
Brutal. Just brutal. That person was probably on their way to work, which is sad.
One other person suffered serious injuries.
The
U.S. has already begun pulling thousands of troops out of Afghanistan, but it won't be a total withdrawal.
The departure of some 4,000 U.S. troops has been unfolding well before President Biden's September 11th deadline, and it will intensify over the next 2 weeks, according to inside sources. They tell the Associated Press about 650 service members will remain in Afghanistan, providing security for diplomats. And several hundred more will remain at the Kabul airport temporarily to assist Turkish troops providing security. The U.S. expects to have most coalition personnel out by July 4th. The withdrawal comes as the Taliban accelerates its battlefield activities. That's fueling fears the Afghan government could collapse in a matter of months. Jackie Quinn, Washington.
Coming up, traffic and weather together on the ones.
This is 680 News.
Every day in Canada, 3,000 mortgages renew. Important announcement. If your mortgage...
Got cancel. It was when she and Justin Timberlake were rumored to be dating, and she came to Calgary to play a show, and out she came snapping her bubblegum, and talking, and didn't have anything to say. She was very, very young, but it's interesting because she's had quite a career, as you well know, and now she's speaking out publicly about her.
Which one of them started? They all start on that Mickey Mouse show.
Some of the stuff is crazy what she's suffered.
Oh, it's honestly disturbing. Like I'd always kind of heard of this, and I honestly was never a big Britney fan, so I didn't pay much attention to it. But now that I'm actually reading into it, this is really messed up.
It's like hundreds of millions of dollars.
Completely had no control. Well, we all remember her very public mental breakdown back in 2008. So since then, she's pretty much lost control of her life. And this is 13 years down the line, and this is unusually long as far as conservatorship goes. Even lawyers are saying it's unusually long. Like, in the way she described it, she said that anyone involved in this abusive relationship, as she said, including all of her management who may be involved and her father, should all be in jail. And it's pretty much akin to torture. Like, she's depressed. She has a contraceptive inside of her that she wants to get out, that she's not allowed to get out, apparently. She's not even allowed to see a doctor. Like this.
She's not, it's an IUD, yeah. She's not allowed to get out. But the control, because her father would make money off of managing her her estate, her money. So he makes money off her. Everyone's profiting off of her. But to think that this woman...
She says like a matter of fact, but it's completely illegal to make money off the trust if you
but I think she's not in control now. But to suggest that they control her to this degree
aside from recouping expenses somehow, but there shouldn't be expenses.
I mean, she's the mother of 2 grown boys, is ludicrous. This would never happen to a guy.
That's honestly, I was about to say, you remember how good of a person Kevin Federline was? And
you know why I don't stack up money and put it in big places where people can see it easily? Because of the take it from me before.
Than she does. It
would never happen to a guy. Fuck you,
But
man.
Kanye West, but he's got mental health illness. No one's taken over his estate. Like, he runs his own show. Like, you know what I mean?
And Kanye goes off hinge on public
You got mental health illness. The white girl's right.
The president doesn't care about black people.
He's not just mentally ill. He's got mental health illness.
But again, why is her estate taken and like no one else's?
And even if we're trying to compare to the mental breakdown she went through, it has been kind of argued a lot that, well, Britney was kind of not a test subject, but really this was stardom gone to a whole new level that had never been really achieved that aggressively and that young. And not like she's innocent to everything, but the media really
what exactly did she innocent? It means that word guilty and innocent. Oh, but it's mental health, so you didn't do anything wrong.
She was a money-making machine since like 3
She
years
saved her
of
head
age.
and everybody went crazy.
You know, her parents were making money off her. Everyone was making. She had no life. I mean, you gotta wonder what it's like to be Britney Spears for all the fame and beauty and fortune and all the rest of it. She's essentially been in jail her whole life.
Did you really just say that?
Like, I know this is not the best thing to complain about, but it still shows how mindless. She says she hasn't got her nails or her hair or massage done in over a year because she's not allowed to. Now, that might not seem like much, but this is one of the most famous people on the planet. This is one of the, arguably, as part of musicians go, she's definitely earned her place, and she can't even choose to go out and get a pedicure. Now, once again, like, I understand it's minute, but that's massive, though. That's disgusting. I don't understand how this has been able to go on for this long and no one can just see it for what it is beyond either she's this unstable or there are literally vampires, leeches, and bloodsuckers just holding on to her.
Yeah, well, she's asking a judge to free her, and I guess we'll have to wait and see. And one of her biggest defenders coming forward is none other than Justin Timberlake. So I guess we'll wait and see, but it's quite a story.
Bedbugs die when they bite me.
Much?
Oh, not anymore.
Get the tuna sandwich because you might not want to.
Oh shit! We almost made it to the top of the hour.
Yeah. So Subway's not
shit. Hold on.
It doesn't, and there is a bit to it though. But like, so Subway, the New York Times pretty much took 3 different samples of Subway's tuna fish sandwich in different locations all over LA.
If Clearwater doesn't supply
there was a DNA
Subway, who does?
To break it down. And
I mean, that's serious. Think about it.
Came back, and this is quote.
He's right. If we don't supply, then who the fuck supplies
DNA present in the sample, therefore we cannot identify the species. That's kind of messed up because Subway says they use skipjack or yellowfin, and that should really pop up if that's what you're using. I don't know.
Okay, hold on. But you could do this with any fast food, like a hot dog or a burger, and test them. And I don't think people want to know what's in their processed food. I really don't.
No.
So I don't know why anyone would be surprised.
In Canada, it'll be the meat they say it is.
We wanted to. It's that lie. We wanted to believe that tuna was tuna. It's not a processed burger. It's not a hot dog. This is tuna.
It's healthier. It's like, no.
Did you check it for chicken DNA?
The one caveat, and an analyst said this to the paper, that there's really 2 options that they see from this, and one that this has been so heavily processed that an identification is just impossible, which is a bit disgusting, scary when we want to believe, or
state of
there's nothing in there.
decomposition.
There's no tuna in there. It's either it's so processed that it's been so mashed with other types of tuna and everything. And honestly, that's kind of terrifying for ethical reasons and for just health reasons. Mercury is not something I want in my body right now. So,
right now,
get it together, Subway.
Well, we'll see. I just don't think
you're like fucking crackheads. You're not gonna stop buying it. You just go get it together, Subway.
Corey, David Bowie posted. David Bowie painting. It sold for $108,000 and it was bought for $5. We talked about it. It got sold.
I'm pretty sure this is the painting that came out of my grandmother's store.
I didn't think it was going to go for $12,000. Someone is wise enough to get it. All right, we got to go because Corey will get angry, and when he's angry, it's scary. All right, up next, your news at the top of the hour, and we'll talk to Robert Malone in just a couple of minutes, inventor of the mRNA vaccines, who's coming out in defense of Dr. Byram Bridle in just a minute.
What the fuck is that?
Just a second.
Up to 1.8%, unlimited international money transfers, and a $300 welcome bonus. It's everything you need, exactly where you need it, all from one bank account. Conditions apply. Rate is for a limited time and varies by savings period. Visit scotiabank.com/ultimate300. Scotiabank.
680 News at 856.
By the way, I have to come home to eat now. I'm not allowed to carry anything sharp to open this shit.
Delivered a better-than-expected earnings report after the closing bell. The package delivery company reporting nearly $2 billion in profit in its most recent quarter, much better than a year ago when it delivered a loss. Package delivery companies like FedEx have really
They're trying to hit me for like $150
bucks. The pandemic as more people stay at home, online shop. At the same time, FedEx has also been delivering COVID-19 vaccines. That's been boosting their bottom line. Net income coming in at $1.87 billion. Revenue was up 30% to $22.5 billion. Shares in FedEx have more than doubled in the last year, but moved lower during the regular trading session today, closing just above $290. Nike also reported earnings after the bell, better than expected numbers. Anthony Accoli, TD Bank.
Reported earnings per share of 93 cents versus 51 cents as expected. Their sales also came in higher, up 96%. Now, again, you're comparing it to last year when all the stores were closed. I think the big highlight here is that Greater China revenue was up 17%, despite the fact that there's some boycotts, which was expected to be a drag on revenue. And it really just shows the Nike brand continues to be very strong in China.
Investors had their buying shoes on today. The S&P.
I bet you got a whole generation of people got to make money out in the streets somehow.
24 points. The Nasdaq up another 97. The Dow was up 322 points, almost 1%. As U.S. President Biden announced a $1.2 trillion infrastructure package for the United States. I
thought they announced that before. Is this the same package?
Was strong today. Canopy Growth gained 5.2%. The price of gold down just over $6.
But they still haven't made one penny in profit ever.
The Canadian dollar lower. The loonie down to 81.09 cents U.S. Top stories next.
You know Canadians going to be about that money. They call it loony.
The doctor will see you now in your living room, on the back deck while you catch the
I just need $1.
in your favorite little alcove where the kids can't find you, or at your makeshift office/lunch desk
I
where you
want
do
to put
all
a
your
war
work
with kids and then hide from them.
With the Telehealth MyCare app, you can see a doctor from anywhere. If you don't have a family physician or can't get to yours, you can see a doctor right from your phone, even on evenings and weekends. Healthcare in your hands with TELUS Health MyCare, formerly Babylon by TELUS Health.
Babylon.
It's the summer of C-Class at Mercedes-Benz Toronto retail stores. Take advantage of 3 payments waived.
So I'm sitting here not getting my prescriptions filled. I got a prescription here somewhere. I can't get to the fucking place in the daytime.
All our certified pre-owned vehicles are fully reconditioned and backed up by a STAR certified warranty of up to 6 years or 120,000 kilometers. Find your Mercedes-Benz today, in stores or online at mbtoronto.ca.
It's 24 degrees and overcast at Toronto Pearson is 27 degrees with overcast skies. 6:80 news time at the Singleton in 9 o'clock.
Not on my fault.
Toronto's #1 for breaking news, traffic, and weather. This is 680 News.
This is Thursday, June 24th. Good evening. I'm Scott Burnett.
I'm Michelle Morton. Here's what's making news this hour.
A grim and tragic confirmation in Saskatchewan. 751 unmarked graves have been discovered at a former residential school site.
With the discovery of hundreds of unmarked graves at a former residential school in our country, the head of a Toronto Indigenous agency says our community will not be celebrating Canada Day. The search continues for nearly
community being Toronto, so like you're saying that in such a strange way.
Here are missing in the rubble following a deadly building collapse.
Bad for you.
A total failure and disregard for human life. Canada releases a forensic report following last year's downing of a passenger jet in Iran. The Golden Knights respond right before the end of the first period against Montreal, while the Blue Jays bats are alive and well in Buffalo. Sports in 15.
Traders hungry for stocks. S&P and Nasdaq closing at record highs today. Plus, NASA and Tide teaming up to do laundry in space. Business at 26.
6:50 news time, 9:01.
Traffic and weather to get there on the traffic center. Carly Donahue.
Well, we still
they don't do laundry in space. They just wear their clothes till they stay.
All that's left
and the guy says, like he does, working at home.
At Finch, and they just need to drive away, and then this highway should be good to go. I've noticed.
Oh, well, fuck, yeah, every fucking blocked up highway, if people just just start driving, it'd be fine. Damn it! Wow, how you just fix everything, eh?
All clear, and then they'll drive off. But in the meantime, from Finch to the 401, all lanes are closed on the southbound 400. You're going to be forced off at Finch, although I really suggest you get off before Finch because the ramp to Finch is just a parking lot. Pretty much it's a parking lot on the south 400 from Highway 7 and the Express down to Finch. The Langstaff, the 407, the Highway 7, the Steeles, and Finch ramps to the southbound 400 are closed until this whole situation
But are they
clears
fully
up.
closed?
So keep that in mind. Southbound on the 404, south of Mulock, we have a right lane blocked off due to a collision. It's causing a delay from approaching Mulock. If you're going Toronto bound on the QEW over the Burlington Skyway, 2 left lanes closed for construction, a minor delay. Eastbound QEW at Ford Drive, 2 left lanes blocked off, and at Air Parkway, another 2 left lanes are closed there. The East 401, West 401, no delays. We just have a left lane closed at Kiel in the collectors on the West 401 and in the Express on the East 401. The Pine Valley ramps to the East 407 are blocked off, and other than that, everything's okay within the GTA. Your next report's at 9:11. Now the forecast, Natasha Ramsahheim.
Mainly cloudy tonight. Slight chance of some passing showers just around midnight tonight. Otherwise, it's going to be cloudy down to 20 degrees. And tomorrow,
there's going to be a monsoon between midnight and 4 or not.
Rain and risk of thunderstorms heavy at times. 28 degrees the high. Overnight tonight down to 20 degrees.
Right now, downtown is 24 degrees and overcast. At Toronto Pearson, a little warmer, 27 degrees, feeling like 30.
We had snow a month ago.
Skies. 680 News.
It was 10 degrees like last night or whatever.
751, the number of unmarked graves made of mostly Indigenous children found at a former residential school in Saskatchewan. This horrific discovery coming weeks after a mass grave was found at a BC former residential school.
680's Parliament Hill reporter Cormac McSweeney joins us with reaction from Ottawa.
Grim and horrific news from Chief Cadmus DeLorme of the Cowessess First Nation, who says after a search with ground-penetrating radar, they have discovered 751 unmarked graves at the grounds of the former Merivale Residential School.
In 1960, there may have been marks on these graves. The Catholic Church representatives remove these headstones.
He adds they're treating this like a crime scene. Chief DeLorme warns there's a 10% margin of error with their number, and they believe there are adults buried there along with children. The school was run by the Catholic Church and operated until 1996. Barry Kennedy,
an hour ago, you said 97.
Abuses took place, and one of his friends, Brian, was taken out in the middle of the night.
Just never returned, right? After they took him, they just never returned.
The chief of the Federation of Sovereign Indigenous Nations says this is more evidence that genocide took place against Indigenous peoples in Canada. The Prime Minister is vowing to provide all funding and resources needed to help First Nations search for more unmarked graves. Cormac McSweeney, Parliament Hill.
With yet another tragic discovery, questions continue to be asked about if the country should be celebrating July 1st, Canada Day. 680's Phil Martino reports the head of Toronto's Indigenous Agency will be not celebrating this year. Phil. And we'll get to Phil in just a moment.
680 News Time is 9:05. A Mississauga priest is under fire for comments he made about residential schools during a sermon on the weekend. Senior Owen Keenan of the Merciful Redeemer Parish said the many people blaming the church would also be thanking it for the good done in the schools. Mayor Bonnie Crombie, a member of the parish, says that she's spoken to him.
He expressed his shame and remorse for the comments and told me he will seek the forgiveness of residential school survivors. In a statement posted on the Merciful Redeemer Parish website, Monsignor
they can forgive you all they want. I mean, I'm going to. Dumbass.
Video of the sermon was originally posted on
That's completely a pedophile mentality too, eh?
Crombie says she's also disappointed that Keenan suggested the Dufferin Peel Catholic schools lacked courage for raising the pride flag.
We head back to 680's Phil Martino, who has the latest from the president of the Toronto Aboriginal Support Services Council on celebrating Canada Day this year or not.
Francis Sanderson, president of the Toronto Aboriginal Support Services Council, says this is a difficult time for all First Nations, Métis, and Inuit.
How can we be expected to celebrate a birthday in the midst of a funeral and mourning for
now? But that's what they're searching for people.
She says it's going to be up to each individual to respond in his or her own way.
Indications that are people that are under there, as we've been searching, they haven't found any air pockets. It's flat, so the building is crumbled in upon itself.
Well, close to 100 people remain missing, and officials at this point say it's not clear what caused the collapse.
They were talking about digging people. Hold on. They were talking about digging people up out of the ground.
And Select Channel 2. In sports and coming into their matchup with the Orioles tonight, the Blue Jays have been heating up, winning their last 4 games in a row. And tonight's game in the bottom of the 5th, the Blue
lagging behind in First Nation communities. That needs to be the focus towards reconciliation.
On July 1st, the CN Tower will be lit orange in solidarity with and in support of Indigenous communities across Canada.
What? I didn't do it, motherfucker.
680 News Time 9.
Y'all get mad at me for that shit.
Of the border after a 12-story beachfront condo in Florida partly collapsed. Nearly 100 people are still unaccounted for. 680's Michelle Mackey is following the latest.
Weather Center, cloudy conditions expected tonight with temperatures dropping to an overnight low of 20. I'm Darren Boland, and this is Global News.
Radar led to the discovery of the unmarked graves.
Thank you.
The machine has a 10 to 15% error percentage. So we will only go by the hits that we have of 751, but we do know there's at least 600. You're going to notice that they are in proper order. These that lay here are 1 meter by 1 meter apart in some cases. We cannot affirm that they are all children.
He says the search continues and that the radar hits will be assessed by a technical team and the numbers will be verified in the coming weeks. The discovery at the school comes after last month's report of 215 bodies of children found at another school near Kamloops in British Columbia. More than 150,000 Indigenous
so he didn't say
children
British
were forced
Columbia,
to
Canada?
attend state-funded Christian schools, many run by the Roman Catholic Church, from the 19th century until the 1970s. The Canadian government's admitted that
That's why they
abuse
didn't
was
let that
rampant
church
in
into the
schools,
Communist Party of
which were
China.
running a campaign to assimilate Indigenous children into Canadian society. Former Minneapolis police officer Derek Chauvin will be sentenced later today for the murder of George Floyd over a year ago. The cases rocked the world and set off protests against police killings and racism across the United States. With more, Fu Yu spoke with Kate Fisher in Washington.
What kind of sentence is Chauvin facing?
Well, the maximum he could face in the state of Minnesota is 40 years, but it's highly unlikely that he will receive that much. He was convicted of second-degree murder, third-degree murder, and second-degree manslaughter. But under the state's sentencing guidelines, he'll only receive a sentence on the most serious charge, that is second-degree murder. Now, without aggravating factors, people in Minnesota who are convicted of that and have no criminal record are typically sentenced to 12.5 years in prison. But the judge has agreed with prosecutors that there are aggravating factors in the case of George Floyd's death, and that could add more time to the sentence. Most legal analysts are expecting at least 15 years, but probably no more than 30.
What's the possibility for the ex-officer?
What are the Vegas odds?
He looks like he will certainly be doing that. His attorney has already filed a motion with the court requesting a new trial, claiming prosecutorial and jury misconduct, among other things. Although a formal appeal to the Minnesota Court of Appeals has yet to be filed, but legal experts expect that because it's likely he will appeal, that Derek Chauvin will say very little or perhaps nothing at all at his sentencing hearing, just so that he doesn't jeopardize any chances that he has for a successful appeal. So yeah, it's certainly likely that he will appeal the sentence.
Finally, what's the significance of the sentencing for the country?
The trial itself was of huge significance because it's very rare in the United States that a serving police officer will be charged and brought to trial for the murder of someone that they are trying to arrest. And the fact that he will now be sentenced and spend time in prison is hugely significant, because most police officers who are charged with this never actually end up behind bars. So it is a big moment for the struggle for racial justice in the United States. And I think people campaigning on that issue will be looking closely to see the length of sentence which is handed down. they'll want to make sure that there is an example made of Derek Chauvin. But from what I've read and the analysts who have studied this case, they believe that the judge is a fair and meticulous man, and they expect this to be what they describe as a fair sentencing.
That was Kate Fisher in Washington, elaborating on the upcoming sentencing of the police officer convicted of murdering George Floyd. Residents of Minneapolis are awaiting the sentencing of Derek Chauvin.
This is very important to the city of Minneapolis. As you can see, there's been a lot of trauma, a lot of hurt, a lot of pain, a lot of anger, a lot of frustration.
The world is watching Minneapolis right now and what we do. And every step of the way, I think
First Nation drug dealers stacking up money off white people's backs over this shit.
The crowds gathered outside the courthouse and demanded justice with placards saying justice for George Floyd and waving Black Lives Matter flags. U.S. President Joe Biden's offered federal government aid after a wing of a 12-story beachfront condo building collapsed in Florida.
Don't give a fuck, Shane.
People are dead and 12 others injured after the collapse on early Thursday. Biden says he's in touch with local officials in Florida about the health.
Adverse events is being suppressed. It's being censored. Scientists aren't being allowed to talk about it. Patients aren't being allowed to talk about it. Patients that try to talk to other patients that have had what they believe to be vaccine-related adverse events are being censored on social media. And in addition, there are some fundamental bioethical guardrails that we in Western societies have all agreed on. Now, that's not the case in the People's Republic of China and in various authoritarian regimes, but I think here in the States and there in Canada, we still consider ourselves to be open Western societies that respect certain rules, and certainly the Canadian people
that's only okay
are notorious for understanding and following rules and behaving ethically. So my concerns are around the
I'm not going to last too long.
The transparency and the bioethics. That doesn't mean that I believe that these vaccines are bad or necessarily toxic or shouldn't be administered or are positive.
Restrictions to ensure NIL doesn't become pay for play. Dozens of businesses have sprung up to help and cash in on the wave. In 2017, Jim Cavale created the software platform Influencer. Now he says tens of thousands of athletes have the Influencer app to help them manage their name, image, and likeness. Creating that business, building personal brands, Cavale says that's the exciting part of this era for all athletes.
Even though it might not mean a ton of money made off of NIL, it's going to help them make the most of the network and surroundings they have while they're playing so that they can start to make those
important message to the world as well, that America can function.
Now, it's not a done deal yet. It has to pass the Congress. Some progressives may not like the idea of compromising with the Republicans, but there is a sweetener for them. Apparently, the president and the leaders in Congress are saying, look, we're going to pass this with a bipartisan role, be able to rebuild America, be there for the 21st century, take on competitors like China, but also all the stuff that's left out, we're going to pass without Republican votes in the Senate through a process called reconciliation, if it's just to do with finance. We'll wait and see what happens, but apparently that is the deal going on, and a key part of President Biden's election promise of rebuilding infrastructure and also the Green Plan. Well, we'll see, but it's one step closer.
And that was Nathan King reporting from Washington. You're listening to the Beijing Hour. Coming up, aerospace scientists from the Chinese mainland are giving lectures at schools in Hong Kong. History is made up of stories. Put down that lengthy book spanning thousands of years and instead follow the Makers and Shakers of Chinese History podcast, which presents the biographies of 20 historic figures who shaped the course of ancient China. Meet the most renowned ancient Chinese rulers, ministers, thinkers, scientists, poets, and rebels, and find out how they continue to influence the Chinese to this day. Subscribe to Makers and Shakers of Chinese History for free on your favorite podcast app. A group of 6 aerospace scientists from the Chinese mainland is visiting Hong Kong and offering lectures at high schools and universities. The scientists have been involved in major space projects, including the Shenzhou spaceships, Long March rockets, and Chang'e lunar probes. At Hong Kong Polytechnic University, they encourage young people to take the spirit of the space program to heart and understand the importance of self-reliance. Doctoral student Li Jiaojin says the lecture was inspiring.
他们提出的一些新的建议 The new suggestions and new research areas put forward by the mainland aerospace scientists have pointed out the way forward and given us confidence. I believe that the space spirits and the confidence in our country will enable the younger generation in Hong Kong to better participate in the development of the Guangdong, Hong Kong, Macau, Greater Bay Area, and our country.
The scientists also highlighted China's success in its space missions and stressed the passion for innovation and perseverance. Maria Tam Wai Chu from Hong Kong's Basic Law Committee says students should learn from the scientists and make greater contributions to the country.
The younger generation should view these scientists as their role models and take pride in national achievements. They should all become those who dedicate themselves to the development of our country with hard work. Our country has made such great development because of such young people with a spirit of utter devotion.
Now, the mainland delegation will also attend the inauguration of an exhibition this weekend of the lunar soil brought back to Earth by the Chang'e 5 probe in
moon
December.
rocks, they're chipping moon rocks. They got them lined
Pushing
up on the
bullet trains
block
will
with
run
these
in
moon
Tibet
rocks.
Autonomous Region for the first time later on today when a new
money.
rail line opens. The 435-kilometer railway links Lhasa and Ningxi with trains that will run at up to 160 kilometers per hour. With the launch of the service, the Fuxing bullet trains series will be available in all provincial level regions of the Chinese mainland. The new railway puts an end to the history of no railways in southeastern Tibet. A batch of new intelligent bullet trains is set to debut as the railway schedule for the third quarter of this year is unveiled in China. Guoyan has more.
With a futuristic outlook, the trains boast features that are smarter, safer, and more energy efficient than other high-speed models that are currently in operation.
What, in
Guo
China?
Dong is Deputy Director
Yeah,
of
like
the
the best
Vehicle
of the best of
Department
the
at
thank
the
you. That
China
makes us feel
National
better.
Railway Group.
Yeah, those two companies. They had 2 different railway companies, both state-owned, competing with each other. This is good. Every time I open my mouth, I want it to freeze up and my head to get all twisted sideways. And I'm like, you're so creative, Chomo.
Shit, tired of getting shot at, tired of getting chased by the Pope.
So they're 2 different state-owned railway companies competing with each other and undercutting each other's bids. So they merged them like last year.
Don't get close. Niggas just talk. You don't wanna see me squeeze at your show or your mom where you sleep. Take your bitch OT for a couple weeks. That's 100 bands for me. That's more guns and coke for my team. I'll never leave mine lonely. And day one niggas with them till we RIP. I'll never leave them lonely. And niggas just talk. You don't wanna see me squeeze at your show or your mom where you sleep. And take your bitch OT for a couple weeks. And that's 100 bands for me. And that's more guns and coke for my team. I'll never leave mine lonely. And day one niggas with them till we RIP. I'll never leave them lonely. I was never with the funny shit. I got some strippers and fiends. How you think I'm getting money, bitch? I was gone, I had to do a bid. I could have been back sooner, but I never was the type to snitch. My young niggas got their load of clip, and they ain't thinking twice. Send me squeeze, hit it who you rolling with. We roll weed just to cope with stress. We dress in black and kick a door if a nigga try to disrespect. But fuck threats, we coming at your neck. They always running, so the Rugers that we got coming infrareds. You ain't gonna make a home to bed. My shooters shoot, stretch you out and leave you sleeping in a box instead. I count stacks, red, green, and brown. Bitches never benefit me, all they ever did was slow me down. Talking about you wanna hold me down. I was broke a year ago, why you showing me attention now? OTF, man, that's all I got. I bond tighter than a knot, nothing's coming in between my dogs. We all made down bottom hot. So catch me up top with the killers by the parking lot. Yo, I found my mom's strongest rock. Sorry that I kept grinding when every day you told me stop. But see, I had to go and get this guap. We gon' see better days once my niggas make it to the top. I run around the south side with the Glock 9, creeping in the night time and let me see who's outside. I never seen your face when it's crunch time, and you never owned a strap, but in pictures still have gun signs. It don't get close, yeah, it's our time. These other niggas wasting money in the booth, spitting dumb lines. It's marksman, yeah, we all shine. It's on site, we'll shoot shots and leave his body on the roadside. Fuck your hood, but I love mine, cause all my niggas train to go, let it blow on the front line. I hit your block, then defend mine. When shit's rough, I sip Henny, smoke weed till my lungs cry, till my eyes close. Me and Pee-wee on the corner ripping beats that is playing off his iPhone. We never had a lot, so we posted up on the same corner, chipping fiends, dodging 5-0. Just talk. You don't wanna see me squeeze at your show or your mom where you sleep. Take your bitch OT for a couple weeks. That's 100 bands for me, and that's more guns and coke for my team. I'll never leave mine lonely. And day one niggas with them till we RIP. I'll never leave them lonely. And niggas just talk. You don't wanna see me squeeze at your show or your mom where you sleep. And take your bitch OT for a couple weeks, and that's 100 bands for me, and that's more guns and coke for my team. I'll never leave mine lonely. And day one niggas with them till we RIP. I'll never leave them lonely. Yeah, my city got some bad hoes. These lame niggas got no game. All they do is pillow talk. But never that I let my money talk. Not a thing in the mall that this power nigga couldn't cop. Fans asking me where you been. Always tell me drop my tape, but I'm busy trying to get it in. But now everybody's rapping sick. But fans know I'm really with the shits, know I live a life to sin. Fuck niggas, we ain't linking up. Your wife piece of dick, that's the same one you kiss and hug. It's because you ain't making moves. All the flexes that you get always flop, never follow through. Yeah, I'm repping blood, but my little nigga S-Pound was dressed in blue. Hoodie up and follow you. My mind state is fucked, and I blame it on the game, all the craziness growing up as a ghetto youth. But I know God watching me. I bet Ryder gonna spray if a nigga tried robbing me. A robbery turned hobby scene. Always have an alibi if a rat say they spotted me. This is for my niggas in the slums. Never stressing over bitches, never leaving home without a talk. I still never met a soul I trust, so I'll never play fair. We out here, niggas know what's up. Your fans calls you from the bin, you never pick it up. Leave him hungry like a bum, but every weekend in the club. That's the shit a pussy nigga does. Made me wanna catch you slipping, give you every bullet in this gun. Just gave him years, you watch his little sister cry tears running down her face, and you never had a word to say. Nigga, you ain't sick, you were just a nerd the other day. No matter how much weight you lift, this fist will make you levitate. You ain't in the trap, you ain't know the meaning of getting paid. Let them niggas hate, they ain't phasing me cause I'm here to stay. I do my thing, niggas sit in circles and talk about it. Rubber grip, chrome, there's not a day on walk with other niggas sneak. They say my nigga name and your guests around the yellow tape. The place our neighbors would have to walk around it. Stomach growling with no food in the fridge. Little nigga, that's on the night shift, you know what it is. Niggas just talk. You don't wanna see me squeeze at your show or your mom where you sleep. Take your bitch OT for a couple weeks, and that's 100 bands for me, and that's more guns and coke for my team. I'll never leave my lonely. And day one niggas with them till we RIP. I'll never leave them lonely. And niggas just talk. You don't wanna see me squeeze at your show or your mom where you sleep. And take your bitch OT for a couple weeks, and that's 100 bands for me, and that's more guns and coke for my team. I'll never leave mine lonely. And day one niggas with them till we RIP. I'll never leave them lonely. 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 Lonely.
confident that there isn't similar problems happening in older cohorts. It kind of doesn't make sense that it would be limited just to young adults. And so that's another fundamental concern, only a concern.
Yeah, the basic
I'm not
math
meaning to
doesn't
be
add
an
up.
alarmist in any way, but
So we're thinking young people, old people are just quiet.
Scientists
What do you
have
do with
to
all the old
do.
people? Oh, they're
Getting
dead.
back to the point about Dr. Bridle.
I apparently didn't catch what that person said.
So
It's
facility installations and offshore
I guess they
commissioning
said something
work.
yesterday. We'll
The
find
energy
out.
station was delivered on January the 14th after a journey from the Yellow Sea off Shandong province. It's expected to supply 3 billion cubic meters of natural gas each year to Guangdong, Hainan, and Hong Kong.
So you
This
don't
is
want to buy
China's
no
first
natural gas off
deep-water,
boats from
self-operated
Canada?
gas field
We didn't
with
think
an
so.
average operational depth of around 1,500 meters. It's time for a short break.
Wait,
so
what?
far this hour, a white paper has been released on the Communist Party of China's role in protecting human rights. Hundreds of bodies have been discovered.
Oh,
The second
wow, here we
residential
go.
school for
Shit, I
indigenous
wasn't
children
expecting them to
in
do
Canada.
that.
And a group of aerospace scientists from the Chinese mainland is visiting Hong Kong and offering lectures at high schools and universities. And Shane Bigham with you. Stay with us here on the Beijing Hour.
Get out of the fucking way, stupid. They released a white paper on the contributions of the Communist Party of China to human rights. Hey, can you back us up on this genocide thing? The unmarked graves and all that? And oh, you already are, right? My enemies are my allies.
Hey, this is backed by data.
Oh,
I mean, and I'm curious. I mean, okay, but they say they're basing these decisions on data. There's not a lot of data out there.
Wait, maybe I should wait. It went out. Maybe I should wait 5 minutes.
My name is Emmo. And don't you forget it. Taking out your poison, you don't know how I did it. Picking up your clue, one by one. Don't step my way, cause I just might have a gun. Maybe loaded, just might not be, cause I'm a menace to society. My name not sticky figures, but I still get here. So back the fuck up and just chill. Cause stepping on me, you'll be a bite in your will. I'm like an energizer, can never die. Buck, 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 buck. Nice try. Ha ha ha. I saw you run in the building, throwing up my guns to the ceiling. Buck, buck, buck. Here I go again. Buck, buck, buck. Catch it coming in. Running to the back, matter of fact, up the staircase. I got no time to waste. Nobody see my face, so I leave without a trace.
You already know, especially that the elf is that way. You know how I do it.
Because you were hungry, you need to eat. So you telling me that you want to go and do what? You want to exercise what? La 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 la.
Will this end up on this playlist? Huh?
You already know what it is. Because you were hungry, you need to eat. So you telling me that you want to go and do what? You want to exercise what? La 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 la. Look at what you have become now. Look at what men have become, sitting here waiting for food. Waiting for free food to go. And so they realize that they can make a buck off you and call it exercise. They fabricated this thing and they called it exercise. It doesn't even exist. Listen to me. Strength, fitness, and exercise doesn't exist. Bodybuilding doesn't exist. You want to know why bodybuilding doesn't exist? You want to know what builds your muscle, what actually builds your body or muscle? It's called a thing called adaptation. See, the moment you lift this thing, what we cause damage to the muscle. So the muscle, the brain has to release these chemicals. It sends down these cells. What it does is it repairs the damage, boom, then it lays down new tracks. Because it doesn't want to be injured again. It has to prevent permanent injury. Because if you keep lifting that table repeatedly, you're going to cause permanent injury to your body. You're going to fucking fall apart. Get it? That's how it works. Your body grows through injury. It doesn't grow through, I'm going to go lift a heavy weight, I'm going to get big, I'm going to get strong. I'm going to get strong, I'm going to get big. It doesn't work like that in the real world. Maybe their fantasy world up there, somewhere up there in the fantasy world, but in the real world, it doesn't work like that. See what I mean? That's how it works, bud.
I don't want to sit at home watching TV.
See how brainwashed and dumb you are? Hey, let the head ring. Let the head ring. You're gonna let the head ring get you.
You're gonna spend all your money making some other guy rich.
Nobody ever got huge lifting a heavy weight off the floor. It doesn't work like that. Not in the real world. Maybe the fantasy world. Oh yeah, they took a drug and they got big. Yeah, they got water. Why, if you take a drug, you get big muscles? Your muscles aren't big. You're filling up with water because you're not giving it time to even grow. If you don't give your body time to grow back to repair the damage, guess what happens? It shoots water in your muscle. Why?
Yeah,
that's got to protect itself from more damage.
That's what inflammation is. Inflammation is water.
No, inflammation, when you get that, when you damage the muscle, you get inflammation. But if you keep repeatedly lifting a heavy weight and you don't give it time to repair and remodel, this is what's going to happen. It's going to fill up with water in the cells.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
You get big muscle. You think you got muscles. It's all
water weight.
That's right. Inflammation is on the inside.
Anybody can put a water weight.
When you cause damage, you get inflammation from damage. You don't get inflammation from your muscle.
I'm so glad I hit the record button on this one.
Explain to you? That's how
And I run out of memory 1 second after he gets to the point.
Yeah, if you listen to them, they'll have you doing all sorts of stupid shit.
Why can't I can't listen to this?
You get it straight. It's like, listen, I don't want to wear myself out and get tired. The less work.
So God doesn't have needs.
You already know what it is. CTWG. Call me terracotta, I'm making disappear. Call me Harry Potter, boy I got moves like a gold trotter. I run down when the devil, boy that's on tomorrow. I'm a mama's boy, never had a father. Got some demons in my chest, kinda hard to swallow. Funny man. I got a rello twisted thicker than a rosin thread. Got me feeling nicer. And over they were there. I got that bomb kush straight from Hiroshima. Orange kush, call that bitch with Khalifa. President Obama got me smoking presidential. And on my weed man, that ain't carry big credentials. Smoking on some banging grip straight from South Central. I told the head this and the head turned into presidential. How you learning? While I'm burning, presidential Bill Clinton, and she slurping, steak in the air, like a landfill. This kush louder than a flock of plane ambulance. I smelled it through the jump, I was so out. Got it at the doctor's with the weed card. Experimental when it comes to the medical. Commander NT, smoking presidential. Feeling like the president, never state you never been. Kush out with Washington and Lincoln, Jefferson, Jackson, and Benjamin. We all cushed out on Montel medicine. I'm smoking on the type of weed that win awards. Presidential suite on the 420th floor. My weed man threw the Pineapple Express. Obama got me lifted, military dress. Passenger 420 on Air Force One. Smoking so much kush like I got 4 nuns. THC releasing dopamine at high level. Got me laughing at everything like I'm real parents. Lighting up everywhere like it's legal. Lighting up like it's Christmas Kringle. Smoking on Barack while drinking on some ride. Got me fucked up. I got the wood ride.
High and close 1.2% lower. Star 50 lost to close to 2%. One thing the liquidity injection does show the Chinese central bank's determination to show that it's keeping monetary policy steady. This is something the authorities here have said time and time again, and this is a pretty clear example that they're not
I only get on these beats because you can't. My mind got a state of gold like Kevin Durant. We've been dogs since day one, like the letter get a tramp. Back when Disney never had Fox under the stamp. It's the camp on my Glock stamped, held it down like a clamp. Yeah, it mess up your stomach, it's not cramps. Every time I take off, so I did it off a ramp. Thought your boy was soldier, but it was telling and got cranked. Self-lager, still sipping Canadian lager. Yeah, orange just a new black, baby just free blocker. Like this big on the streets, like B Topper. Killing shit, but came out of thunder like Ibaka. Mikasa, swear su casa, and a blue balaclava. Pop out the piece like a soccer. We got it. When we bung fire, it's like lava. Before we got social, all the media bombers, comma. Like you ain't got bars like that. 13 stabs like you ain't got scars like that. My nigga in a jacket moving like this all I rap. It's all I rap. Get these groupies off my back. Bam, bam. Blam to them all. Listen to them shots from my nigga doggy dog. Bam, bam. Blam to them all. Listen to them shots from my nigga doggy dog. Bam, bam. I'm Snoop Dogg, I put your bitch in a doggy style. Slap it for a week and guarantee she don't walk a while. A rich rappers calling my name, I better knock him down the dominoes. Nigga, I snap like a crocodile. Like if they needed space, my bullets hit them with rocket power. Cooking up coke and never looking like cauliflower. Yeah, where the lyricists? Oh yeah, niggas is pussy, all clitoris. Haters when I'm killing this, it's rap shit. I touch everything like a physicist. If you playing, I'm going off like I'm ticklish. You lick a bitch, better watch your Uma. You glowing up on Gucci, all my people want a Puma. The bullets got no name and they travel like a Uber. They send you to shoot niggas, tell on you like Cuda. Like what's truer? These niggas newer. We used to keep the rat in the sewer, so we don't ever mix in this manure. I'm the future. In your past, these motorcycles damn go fast. I treat this bitch like Bangladesh. I bang my chest. Gorilla, break your flesh, suspense compress, and gunshots this man confess like bam, 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 bam to them all. Listen to the sounds of my nigga doggy dog. Bam, 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 bam to them all. Listen to the sounds of my nigga doggy dog. Bam, 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 bam to them all. Listen to the sounds of my nigga doggy dog. Bam, 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 bam to them all. Listen to the sounds of my nigga doggy dog. Bam, bam.
Because the imagery will show a shape, it doesn't exactly show you specifically what is below the ground. And we don't know if their deaths were of an illness or abuse, rape, or even murder. But what we do know is that those running these schools, and many of them would still be alive because they were running up until 1997. So there are a lot of calls for justice.
Thank you.
There are calls for the Pope to come forward and issue a formal apology, for the Catholic Church to hand over documentation, unless, of course, it's been destroyed.
In the router for like 10,
then you ask, can it be done? And given how much time has gone by and the degradation to evidence, how can criminal justice be served on crimes that are decades old? Let's ask Joe Newberger, criminal lawyer with Newberger and Partners. And I thought about this, Joe, because I thought, like, this is a really tough question to answer. Like, how can you get justice, in this?
Well, I don't think there's going to be any justice in the sense of, really understanding and trying to deal with the damage that's been done. But what I do think is that this has to be treated now as a potential homicide investigation. It's not just a crime scene. The removal of the gravestones is not only disgusting and an offense, but it seeks to hide atrocities that occurred at a time when these people were vulnerable and had grievous harm inflicted on them. And I think now it's really, really important that we bring to bear the appropriate measure of forensic and police investigative technique to try and treat these investigations as not only a crime scene, but potential homicide.
You know, Maru Blue polling looked into this, and they found that a majority of Canadians support that a criminal investigation. Canadians want that to be open, and you would think already with Kamloops Residential School, where 215 bodies, we would have heard more by now. But, you know, if the government wants to do something, then they've got to take action. No one cares about their thoughts and prayers. No one cares if they tweet. They want action, and part of that action would be either to hand over the documents that they have, because the government itself would be held liable, but
the records of every other bill they paid the last 154 years or whatever.
You know, that hasn't happened.
Yeah. You raise excellent points, and I love what you say. You know, you can make as many apologies as you want publicly and in the House of Commons and talk about reparations. That's not the point here. The point is that people were inhumanely treated and crimes occurred. And now we have to treat this as a criminal case and a criminal investigation. And I absolutely agree with you. And I think as a criminal investigation, the powers that the police have to execute search warrants, to get information from the government, from the church. We've seen this happen in other cases. There was a public inquiry into sexual abuse in Cornwall. I was part of that. They were subject to search warrants. And this is far more egregious because we have deaths of young children and maybe adults. And this needs a full front attack where we're going to deal with it as a criminal investigation, and the government's not going to be able to hide behind privilege or anything else. They should be subject to the same investigation that you and I are, or any other institution in this country.
I mean, when you look back to the history books, I mean, it's 1997 when the last school closed. That would be under the Chrétien government. And so there are lots of documents, and this isn't to blame one government or the other, because there's lots of blame to go around on this.
You don't like Chrétien.
You know, there's complexities, because first of all, there's going to be many, many more of these found.
These are the role models I grew up with. He's an old white French-speaking guy, prime minister of the country, and he's throttling people.
You know, it's going to take years before we actually find all of these bodies that are believed to be across this country. And so, and then there's the integrity of the scene. I mean, these burial grounds have been built on, walked. I mean, all sorts of composure, like they've lost composure. You know, you can do the forensics on the bones, you know, those kinds of things, but it only tells so much of the story.
Come up with 800 shark bite wounds. I'm going to fucking
investigation, and justice won't come in a couple of years.
No, you're absolutely right. So I think
they can tell what killed the guy 3,000 years ago. You think they can't figure someone from 100 years ago?
Are we going to be able to charge people, hold them accountable? We may not, in the same sense as it would be in a true criminal investigation with more current
we're Dutch,
evidence.
we do that. We track down Nazis.
We should still treat it with the same seriousness, because what happened
reported like a 93-year-old like 2 years ago.
So we should treat it as a criminal investigation, get as much information as possible. There may be contamination and degradation of evidence.
Send him back to Germany. Germany locked his ass up.
From using investigative techniques, seeking documents, what was written down at the time, what was documented, what did the government know, what did the people know who were running the institutions. There will be sources of information. There will be gaps in information. There will be people who won't give us information. But that doesn't mean we don't treat it as an investigation. Each site at each residential school will be its own individual crime scene. But it will be part, and should be part, of a national criminal investigation, maybe headed by the RCMP or a multi-jurisdictional approach with various police services. But we must bring to bear on it the best that we have in order to uncover as much information as possible.
I'm up against the clock, and not to mention really a civilized nation that actually pays for the crimes, you know, unlike other countries that would try to bury these. All right, Joe, I gotta leave you on that note, but yeah, there you go. Got to let you go there. Thank you, sir.
Always a pleasure, Alex. Have a great show as usual.
Joe Newberger joining us. So very, very complex, but no question, justice must be delivered. Stay with us here on Point on Global News Radio.
And now it's time to go out and take a look at the roads with chopper traffic. Here's Ari Rabinovich.
And great news on the South 400. After a whole day that we've been dealing with this crash investigation, the southbound 400 is reopened at Finch. All lanes, all on ramps, including the ramps at Flagstaff, Highway 7, 407, Skeels, and Finch onto the South 400 are
right on the sports. Damn it. Every fucking station internationally will be on sports right about now.
2020 knockout stage begins this weekend, as well as cycling's showpiece event in France.
Yeah, but the Netherlands beat
Brandon
Austria.
Yates provided us with his top 3 picks of sporting action to watch.
First up, the Tour de France cycling race begins this Saturday. I think the sensational young Slovene Tadej Pogačar can claim the yellow jersey again, but I think his countrymen, Primož Roglič, and a few other experienced riders have a chance to stop him. Secondly, 4 of the Euro 2020 football last 16 clashes are taking place this weekend, and I think the most exciting match will be between world number 1 Belgium and defending champions Portugal. I expect plenty of thrilling attacking football and drama in this match. Finally, in rugby action, the Gallagher Premiership rugby final between Exeter Chiefs and Harlequins is happening this weekend. Exeter won both encounters with Harlequins in the regular season and have won their last 8 matches in a row, so I expect...
What, these guys be on sports too.
Wearing, and as we've seen kind of uneven vaccination rates around the country, what concerns do you have? As we mentioned, we're speaking to you from Georgia, and many southern states have low COVID vaccinations.
Now this is the sound of BBC World Service. Just nothing. Just nothing. Not even a weird beeping tone or something to let us know they're still there. Nothing.
Ein Leben wie die Geißen, du willst immer streiten wegen anderen Frauen. Ich hab noch niemals eine angefasst, du kannst mir vertrauen, Baby. Doch in letzter Zeit.
Made with fresh dough and ultra-thin crust, our signature sauces, and 100% Canadian mozzarella cheese. Try the new charcuterie pizza.
The check-in into the hotel is very different. Normally, I would be joining you at the auction. But I cannot get out of the hotel, the car, and the club. So that's what's going to be my life like for the next couple of weeks. But it's Wimbledon time, and I'm really, really excited that Wimbledon is back on.
Wednesday's auction saw 20 items go under the hammer, fetching $1.8 million to benefit Roger Federer Foundation, which helps early life education in his mother's native South Africa and his home country of Switzerland. Items include the outfits he wore when completing the Korea Grand Slam and the 2009 French Open, his last Wimbledon title in 2017. US Open champion Dominic Thiem has pulled out of Wimbledon because of a wrist injury. The Austrian player sustained injury during the ATP event in Mallorca earlier this week. Thiem is the second top 5 player to pull out of Wimbledon after Rafael Nadal, and his withdrawal means Alexander Zverev will be the 4th seed. Meantime, Andy Murray will bid for a 3rd consecutive Olympic gold medal after being included in Britain's 6th-round tennis team for the Tokyo Games. The 34-year-old will also play in men's doubles with Joe Salisbury. In Formula 1, Silverstone has confirmed that next month's British Grand Prix will take place in front of 140,000 spectators during the 3-day span. The announcement marks the biggest UK crowd since the start of the COVID-19 pandemic. However, the world champion Lewis Hamilton has questioned logic behind the decision.
I'm kind of split. I can't tell you how excited I am to see people, and firstly to see the British crowd, because it is the best crowd of the whole year. So, obviously last year we didn't have them. To be able to see them and feel the energy that they bring into a weekend. On the second, obviously, of course, I watch the news, so I hear about the cases going up massively in the UK, and so on that side, I worry for people, naturally.
Formula 1 goes to Austria this weekend at the Styrian Grand Prix. Hamilton's intense rivalry with Max Verstappen is expected to continue on that circuit. Verstappen has a 12-point lead in the championship standings. In the NBA, the Atlanta Hawks beat the Milwaukee Bucks 116-113 to take their first win in the Eastern Conference Finals since 1968. Trae Young scored 48 points, and Hawks big man Clint Capella converted a go-ahead putback with 30 seconds left. The Hawks improved to 6 wins and 2 losses.
Of course, in part to the warmer winters and climate change, but what's being found now is that ticks aren't just in rural areas. What they're doing is spiking up in urban cities like city parks. A friend of mine just took her daughter to the playground last
of them in here one day.
Came home with a tick. And thankfully, her daughter noticed it, but otherwise,
they are the creepiest looking thing. I have found so many ticks in here, and it's strange.
The risks of things like Lyme disease. Dr. Lori Burrows, professor of biochemistry and biomedical sciences at McMaster University in Hamilton. Good to have you here.
Thanks for having me.
I hate bugs, so when I was even reading up on this, I find myself always getting itchy because this would be my worst nightmare, to have a tick on me and burrowing into my skin. But how bad has the problem become in Ontario?
It's getting significantly worse than it was, for example, 5 to 10 years ago, just because our winters are increasingly getting warmer. So, we have a longer season where animals are active and ticks are biting, and that leads to more ticks, obviously, right? Because they're reproducing the whole time.
In the winter too?
Just in the shoulder seasons, right? So our winters have gone from 4 really cold months to maybe 2 really cold months, and so that
fucking things are
provides a
surviving somewhere throughout the winter.
reproductive time for the ticks and leads to higher numbers of ticks.
So, not all ticks are created equal. As I was going through my tick knowledge, which ones are the ones of
individual
concern?
ticks in here?
Yeah, so there's a few common ticks in Ontario, but the ones that we're particularly concerned about are black-legged ticks, and those are the ones that are the host for the bacterium that causes Lyme disease.
It's a bacteria.
And how do you know?
Well, I'm no tick expert personally, but the public health labs can identify the type of tick. And, not all black-legged ticks actually carry the bacterium, but, it's impossible to know unless you have someone check the type of tick and then check whether it carries the bacterium. And, one of the things that people don't realize is how small these ticks are. So they can be as small as a poppy seed. So they're not that easy to spot.
The ones I see are a quarter inch
That's what my friend
across.
said. She said she had no idea her daughter had a tick on her leg. It was her daughter who actually found it and said it was like microscopic, but they got rid of it, only then realizing, oh my goodness, it's a tick. And you think, okay, if that hadn't been spotted, it would have just had dinner for a night or two or whatever and ballooned up.
Right, exactly. So you will spot them eventually if they stay on you, because they will start to swell as they drink blood. they're little bags of blood essentially. But when they first attach to you, they will be very small. So you should be looking for something that's
does this
like
apply to
a
someone with
dark
sickle
freckle
cell
that isn't normally there. And if you look closely at that freckle, if it has legs, it's a tick.
Okay, so what do you recommend then to parents? Like, what's the best way to get rid of them, get them off?
Yes.
Well, first of all, I would recommend that they prevent them from attaching in the first place, right? So
don't go outside.
It's summertime and people are wearing shorts and,
how are they getting in my
house? Stuff, right? So your skin is exposed, and as you mentioned in your introduction, we used to think that ticks were more of a long grass kind of a thing, but that's not true anymore because they're so numerous. They are starting to get into parks and anywhere where there's a bit of
every time a piece of grass brushes your leg, there's a tick on it that just bit you.
Wildflowers and longer plants because they're trying to protect insects like bees. So being exposed to that is going to get you exposed to ticks. So you want to protect yourself with insecticide spray. If you read the bottle, it says that it's good for ticks, just like you would for mosquitoes.
Oh, if you read the bottle, it says.
If it's cool, you can wear long pants and sleeves and make sure that your skin isn't exposed.
No, I can't. I got leg ulcers.
If you do spot one, there is a technique. Okay, yeah, take us through that.
Yeah, so if you do get one on you, there's lots of videos on the internet on how to take a tick off of you. You want to make sure that you pull it out slowly and directly upwards so that if it has bitten into you, that you get the mouth parts out of you. Because the longer the tick stays attached to you, the more chance there is that it can transmit any bacteria that it's carrying. And if you leave bits of the tick behind, those mouth parts can be contaminated with bacteria.
Oh, happy summer. Okay, doctor. I appreciate the insight because when I read this, I was like, oh, fun. Okay, next it'll be locusts, but for now we'll just take the ticks. Doctor, I appreciate your time on this.
Thank you very much.
That is Dr. Lori Burrows out of McMaster University. So there you go. Beware, they're not just a country thing. Okay, that wraps up this Thursday as we inch away closer to the weekend. Charlie Adler will take you forward from here on Global News Radio 640 Toronto and our sister station Global News Radio CFPL in London. I thank you and I thank my team. We'll chat on Friday here on Point. I'm Alex Pugh.
Paper has been released on the Communist Party of China's role in protecting human rights amid that surging rail traffic.
Why don't they teach us about that in general?
On behalf of the staff, this is Shane Bigham in the Chinese capital. Hoping you'll join us for the next edition of the Beijing Hour and open a window to the world together.
我要学汉语. I want to learn Chinese.
其实并不难 It can be fun.
欢乐汉语 Chinese Studio.
Perfect Chinese your way in only 5 minutes a day. Welcome to our Chinese studio. 早上好, everybody. I'm Yajie.
Hello, I'm Cam. 早上好.
Last time we learned some expressions when shopping. 元,角, and 分.
元,角, 分. No.
Damn it.
I think it made it a little bit easier for them to write a graceful retirement for the character. And they had this kind of big team. But it was definitely one of the most challenging and difficult things that could happen to a franchise of this size. And it's kind of amazing that it went on the way that it did.
You talk about how the franchise sort of shifted and expanded. And as you write in your essay, from the very beginning, Fast and Furious embodied inclusion and really progressive representation.
They really did. And, you know, at a time when a lot of franchises like this did not have diverse casts and characters, they did in this one. You know, they began to, maybe not in the very first one, but once they were adding actors like Tyrese Gibson and Ludacris, and obviously starting with Michelle Rodriguez, who was in the first one, and it's something that has meant a lot to the fans of this franchise who have valued that inclusion quite a lot.
So what's the secret of its success during a tough time for Hollywood?
Well, you know, I think flexibility. They have adjusted a bunch of different times. They actually moved one of the movies around in the timeline in order to have somebody who had died kind of undie. And at times they have really found the sweet spot of spectacle,
so they could
good
release
humor.
a movie
So now I think they're a little bit collapsing under the
filmed,
weight
right?
of sheer escalation of stunts.
Bigger.
Bigger. But, you know, at times they have really found that sweet spot, and it has been a lot of fun, I think, especially around like the 5th to the 7th. Great fun to go to these.
Does it even matter if critics like them?
You know, it doesn't necessarily matter, but critics have actually liked some of these movies quite a bit. I think particularly the 5th one, the 7th one, have really gotten good reviews. Critics like these when they're good.
Linda Holmes of NPR's Pop Culture Happy Hour podcast. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Ari. You're listening to All Things Considered from NPR News.
Support for NPR comes from this station and from Procter & Gamble, maker of Align Probiotic, a daily supplement to support digestive health, containing a probiotic strain developed by gastroenterologists with 20 years of research. More at alignprobiotics.com. From your part-time controller, specializing in nonprofit accounting. Your part-time controller works to help nonprofit organizations, remotely or in
Vollkommen verballert, kein bisschen Niveau. In St. Pauli sind wir solche Bitches gewohnt. Und trotzdem schockiert sie mich immer wieder so. Egal wo, sie benimmt sich wie eine Ho. Vollkommen verballert, kein bisschen Niveau. In St. Pauli sind wir solche Bitches gewohnt. Und trotzdem schockiert sie mich immer wieder so. Sie ist ne Bitch, fang nichts mit dir an. Sie ist gut rumgekommen, nachher wirst du kalt. Sie ist ne Bitch, glaub ihr ja kein Wort. Gib ihr nicht deine Nummer, weil sie dich da steuert. Sie ist ne Bitch, am Anfang erkennst du's nicht. Doch mit der Zeit siehst du, wie crackig sie ist. Sie ist ne Bitch, sie sagt, sie nimmt die Pille. Schneller als du denkst, ist ein Kind in ihr drin. Es gibt hier 5 Körbe, doch sie kommt immer noch. Heute sieht sie sogar ein bisschen gut aus im Unirock. Viel zu viele Jungs, die ich kenne, haben sie mitgenommen. Deshalb nehme ich sie mit, sodass es keiner mitbekommt. Ich bin Tamlesch und trink sie nicht schön. Ganz ehrlich, bei Frauen bin ich ein bisschen verwöhnt. Also Licht aus, die Furie tickt aus, zieht sich aus, bringt auf mich rauf. Ich merk fast gar nichts mehr. Sie nutzt die Situation aus und wird dann noch langsam pervers. Mal viel zu viel Lärm tut, auf dominant. Ich schlaf fast ein und ich schrei, guck mich an. Mein Kopf kommt gegen die Wand, ich erwache. Denk, wer ist diese Frau, die da zappelt? Hau sie von der Kante. Zum Glück wird rechtzeitig die Bremse gedrückt, denn wer weiß, halb Hamburg verkehrt mit dem Schlüssel. Sie ist ne Bitch, glaub ihr ja kein Wort. Gib ihr nicht deine Nummer, weil sie dich dann stalkt. Sie ist ne Bitch, fang jetzt mit dir an. Sie ist gut rumgekommen, nachher wirst du krank. Sie ist ne Bitch, am Anfang erkennst du's nicht, doch mit der Zeit siehst du, wie crackig sie ist. Sie ist ne Bitch, sie sagt, sie
51 unmarked graves that have been discovered near a residential school in their community. Global's Ryan Kessler with the details. Ground-penetrating radar has confirmed what people from Cowessess First Nation knew all along. Hundreds of unmarked graves near the former Maryville Residential School, an estimated 751. Chief Cadmus DeLorme says it's not a mass grave, and at one point there were individual markers at the burial sites, but Catholic Church officials removed them in the 1960s.
These are unmarked graves, and we didn't remove these headstones.
removing headstones is a crime in this country, and we are treating this like a crime scene at the moment.
Now he's calling on the Pope to apologize. Ryan Kessler, Global News, Saskatoon. Well, First Nation leaders in Saskatchewan say it will take time for the community to heal from this horrific discovery. Joining On Point with Alex Pearson tonight, Heather Baer, Vice Chief of the Federation of Sovereign Indigenous Nations and survivor of the Mirabel school system, residential school system that is, says healing is paramount, but Baer notes she has been struggling with that process.
We talk about mindful forgiveness, right? The first step was a big step to healing. And right now in this moment, when I think about the hundreds of children, and I know there's more, but how do you fathom forgiveness? Who do we forgive? Canada, the priest, the nuns, God? You know, who do we have to forgive in order to move forward?
Well, both federal and provincial leaders across Canada have committed money to help First Nations search residential school sites. Well, here in Ontario, Premier Doug Ford was asked about the tragedy and says his heart and prayers go out to the First Nations community all across the country.
We've given $10 million to make sure that we put all the resources in Indigenous communities across Ontario to find if there's any graves in Ontario. It's heart-wrenching. You think of these little kids. It's
fucking call me an apple again.
Make sure that we put all the resources in to find out if there's any unmarked graves here in Ontario. So it's a tragedy, absolute tragedy.
Also, in solidarity with Indigenous communities, the City of Toronto says the CN Tower will be lit orange on Canada Day. Well, Ontario has announced it will move into the next step of its reopening plan June 30th, 2 days earlier than planned. Waterloo is the lone exception, being held back in step 1 until mid-July because of concerning COVID-19 case trends and the Delta variant. Global's Brandon Carnegie explains what all of this means for you.
As of 12:01 a.m. Wednesday, more customers will be allowed into stores. Gatherings will be allowed of 25 people outdoors and 5 people indoors, meaning people can start seeing their friends and family again. And yes, personal care services can reopen, so that long-awaited haircut is now just days away.
These are great rewards for New Ontario who have made this time, and we're taking it slowly and cautiously going forward.
Outgoing Chief Medical Officer of Health, Dr. David Williams, credits Ontarians and the COVID-19 vaccines for this progress. With his retirement, he handed off the role to Dr. Kieran Moore, who is optimistic for an 80-80 vaccination rate of first and second doses.
We'll be able to open up more fully and more safely very quickly.
Global News.
Well, at least one person is dead, and residents are telling dramatic stories of survival after a 12-story beachfront condo.
Victoria.
I'll fucking give up.
Later this month, the American people will observe one of their most solemn holidays, Memorial Day, set aside for the purpose of honoring those who have died in the wars fought to perpetuate our freedom. This evening, your FBI unveils for your inspection the case history of an American communist, a man who may be responsible for the future deaths of countless of his fellow Americans, if there should be a Third World War. This man was a courier in the atomic spy ring, a citizen of our country who espoused the doctrine of hate and became a traitor. His life testifies to the utter darkness of the communist way. And by examining that life, we see the tragic error of communism, a blight which saps the moral strength of a man and leaves him a helpless puppet. Tonight's FBI file opened on a January afternoon in 1944. The place is a city street corner in downtown New York. I wasn't there. I found out about this part of the story years later. I'm Inspector Young, assigned to the Federal Bureau of Investigation's headquarters staff. I wasn't on that corner, but a short, chunky, bespectacled man was. He was carrying a book with a green leather binder. He was waiting for a man carrying a very strange object in his left hand, an ink-stained tennis ball. After waiting a few minutes, the man with the tennis ball came along. Pardon me. That book from the library? Yes. I'm Dr. Fanola. I'm Christopher. Let's walk. Tell your friend I may not be here long. You just arrived. Possible I'll be here a week, a month, or I may have to leave tonight. For where? Maybe Tennessee. What's so important down there? Our experiments. We're working on nuclear fission. Really? Do you understand? Not entirely, but I'm a chemist. I know what atomic energy would mean. There are better ways to life. Yeah. How will I contact you in the future? On the first page of this book, you'll find a phone number. Call there and leave word with John that you want to see. John is your superior? Yes. All right. I'll call as soon as I have something.
Somebody had to play this music. It wasn't a computer just spin it up.
The world was affected. Dr. Pinola was a member of a team of European scientists, and Christopher was the code name for an innocuous-looking chemist. But both had something in common besides an interest in science. Both were anxious to help in the foundation of a new world, a Soviet world.
Soviet. Pass me a Soviet. I got.
During the next 6 months, all was in a public place. Dr. Pinola passed his papers to Christopher, who in turn kept an appointment with his superior, a man from an Iron Curtain consulate, a man named John. Pardon me, sir. Yes. You had a match? Yes. Oh, thanks. Did you see him? Yes, he gave me some reports. Where are they? In a locker here at the station. He gave you the key. It's in your book of matches. Thanks for the light. Whether he was meeting John or Dr. Pinola, Christopher observed one rule: caution. That was vital, for now the information Dr. Pinola was relaying was becoming more and more important. Everything was going according to plan. And then one day... John, nothing's happened to the doctor. An accident? I can't find out. He didn't meet me this morning. I waited for 2 hours, and then I went to the alternate meeting place. He never came near either one. Go to his apartment. Oh, he's not there. The janitor says he left town, but he doesn't know for where. I thought he'd call you before he went anyplace. He should have. Well, what can we do now? His sister lives in this country. Oh, where? Up in New England. Her name's, Mrs. Clement. I'll give you her address. Go see her.
Just a minute.
Good morning. I'd like to see Mrs. Kermit.
I'm Mrs. Kermit.
Wow. I'm a friend of your brother, Dr. Pinola.
Oh, well, please come in.
Thank you. My name is Mr. Christopher.
Well, won't you sit down, Mr. Christopher?
Thank you.
Do you live here in town?
No, I just happened to be going through. I called the doctor yesterday and found he left New York.
Yes, he's been transferred.
Where to?
Someplace out west.
Uh-huh. Do you have his address?
No, I don't, Mr. Christopher. You know Eric. He always keeps everything about his work so secret.
Yes. Isn't there any way you can get in touch with him?
Well, he said he'd write, but I guess he just hasn't had time.
Well, Mrs. Kermit, if I leave a message, will you get it to your brother when you do hear from him?
Of course.
Just tell him that Mr. Christopher was here. I'll write a phone number for you in New York. Have him call me. A week went by, 2 weeks, a month, and still no word from Dr. Pinola. Then one day, in an office at the communist-controlled consulate in New York. Hello?
John?
Yes.
Dr. Pinola.
Where are you?
In Santa Fe, New Mexico. I was transferred very suddenly to a new atomic center near called Los Alamos.
You should have called me.
I didn't have time.
Do you have any news?
Yes, and it's very important.
Get a leave of absence and bring it east.
I can't. You'll have to leave me.
Where?
Here in Santa Fe.
I'll send Christopher.
All right. Tell him to come to Santa Fe a week from today. I'll meet him at 4 in the afternoon on the Castillo Street Bridge.
4 weeks later, Christopher went by train to Albuquerque. From there, he took a bus to Santa Fe. And now he used the caution he had been taught. He went to a store and purchased a city map.
That meant he wouldn't have to ask anyone for directions to the Castillo Street Bridge. Wouldn't have to speak to anyone who might later identify him. Using the map, he arrived at the bridge. He began to walk across. Where are you going? The bus station. Jump in. Oh, thanks. You have the details with you? It's all the latest. Wonderful. What's that? Wait until I drop you. Why? We're stopped. I'm entitled to have them on me. You're not. Tell John he won't hear from me again. Why not? I'm going back to Europe. My work here is done. When are you leaving? Any day now. Nothing more to be transmitted. When these papers get to Moscow, they know as much about the bomb as we do. We will return in just a moment to tonight's exciting case from the official files of your FBI. But right now, here's a message that may be of great interest to you. It's the experience of Mr. George Whitby, a member and policyholder of the Equitable Life Assurance Society. How long have you been a member, Mr. Whitby? 4.5 years, Mr. Keating. Well, what was it that first interested you in becoming a policy-holding member of the Equitable Society? It was a life insurance plan that I heard you talk about on this program, Mr. Keating. It interested my wife and me so much, we decided to find out more about it. So I looked up the name of our local Equitable Society agent. I gave him the ring, and he dropped around the next evening.
In a fucking phone book.
He seemed genuinely concerned about our problem. He was more like a counselor than a salesman.
I'd say that's a good description of Equitable Society men everywhere, all 8,000 of them. They help you get the kind of life insurance that will be most advantageous to you. They believe that the best insurance service is based on a friendly, mutual understanding between agent and client.
Well, if they're all like our Equitable agents, they're a mighty fine bunch of men to do business with.
They really are. You see, Equitable agents are specialists. They're trained men, professional men, who have chosen life insurance as a career. And they have the backing of a large group of home office specialists. All of them are at the service of every Equitable member and prospective member. And that's a thought I'd like to leave with our listeners. Equitable Society men are good men to do business with. So, if you have a life insurance problem, if you're interested in the future security and the peace of mind of your family, consult the man
World War III. We'll wait for the nuclear bomb to spy nuclear.
Or the name of your local Equitable representative. Or write to the Equitable Society, care of this station.
That's EQUITABLE.
The Equitable Life Assurance Society of the United States.
Some little people that owned shit and had money didn't know how to read and write. Right, this is what we were waiting for.
Long after that meeting in Santa Fe, we at the Federal Bureau of Investigation learned that the basic secrets of nuclear fission had been stolen. I am not at liberty to reveal how we obtained that information, for security and human lives are involved. However, I can tell you the information was conclusive. It proved beyond any question that the secrets of atomic bomb construction had been acquired by Russia. Now Mr. Hoover called a meeting and issued an order. Find the guilty man. To do the job, he mobilized every possible resource. The case was given top priority.
Tom, we've gotten a break on the atomic investigation.
What's that, Jim?
Well, we developed some information about a scientist who was at Los Alamos back in 1945. His name is Dr. Panola.
Is he still at Los Alamos?
No, he's back in Europe, so Mr. Hoover sent our information to the authorities over there. They just cabled that Panola's made a full confession.
Oh, good.
Well, he claims he'll cooperate, but he's only mentioned 2 people he worked with over here.
Do we have any records on them?
Yes and no. First name was somebody named John, who worked at the New York consulate of a communist-controlled country.
So where is he now?
He's back in his own country.
Oh.
The other man Panola named was the courier who delivered his reports to this John. His name is Christopher.
Is that his first or last name?
Panola says that's all he ever called him.
Has he given us any description?
Yeah. Here's the cable with all the information.
Mm-hmm.
Study it, then we'll go to work.
The information supplied by Dr. Pinola was this. Christopher appeared to know chemistry and engineering. He was from 30 to 40 years of age, about 5 feet 8 inches tall.
He was an
He didn't
American
know
high
where
school
Christopher
teacher.
lived, but he thought he was still in the United States. That meant your FBI had the task of locating a man whose name they didn't know, whose complete description they didn't have, and who might be anywhere in the country. In all the history of the FBI, there never was a more important problem than this one. The unknown man had to be found. Of that there was no question. But how? Where do you start on a manhunt where the wanted person could be almost any man in the United States?
Yukon King and Sergeant Preston.
Your FBI had a list of the places where Dr. Pinola had remembered contact being made. One of those places was the home of his sister. I made that my first stop.
Of course he did.
Mrs. Kermit?
Yes?
I'm Inspector Young of the FBI. Here are my credentials.
Come in, please.
Thank you.
I suppose you're here about Eric.
Yes, I am.
Seen those stories in the papers. They're true.
I'm afraid they are.
Mr. Young, may I say something before you ask me any questions?
Of course.
I love my brother, and I'm not deserting him while he's in trouble. But neither my husband nor I ever suspected that he was a communist. But we didn't even know what he was doing in this country.
Perhaps you still can help us. Your brother says a man named Christopher visited you here. What can you tell us about him?
Well, let me see.
Can you give us a description of him?
Well, he was kind of a stocky man. Not too tall. He had sort of brown hair and heavy face. And I think he was I'd say he was about in his middle 30s.
Did he speak with an accent?
No, he didn't.
How long was he here?
About an hour.
Mm-hmm. Did he tell you what he did for a living?
I think he said something about chemistry.
Was he married?
I don't think he said anything about that one way or the other.
Did he mention any city besides New York?
Yes, he did. He told me he came here by train from... Oh, yes, he said Philadelphia. That's about all I can remember about him.
Well, if you think of anything else, I'd appreciate your calling me. Now the full resources of your FBI were put to work. Every tenant in the large New York apartment house where Dr. Pinola had lived was questioned. Some were scattered to distant points on the map, but each was located. Did any of them furnish any information? No. Former employees and scientists at the two atomic centers where Dr. Pinola had been stationed were interviewed. Did they know anything about a heavy-set chemist whose name might be Christopher? No. In Santa Fe, inquiries were made at bus, air travel, railroad ticket offices. Hotel registers were analyzed, again with no results. A list of chemists was compiled from the city records of New York and Philadelphia. Of the tens of thousands who were possible suspects, 15% were immediately eliminated because they were women. Other thousands were removed from the list because of discrepancies in age, physical appearance. Gradually, the number was pared to 1,000, then 500, then 100, then 1. Jim, there's a chemist in Philadelphia named Craig. He might be Christopher. No? Here's his description.
Thanks. Born Russia. Where'd you get his name?
It was on the list of chemists, and it was in our files. We questioned him back in 1947.
Oh, about what, Tom?
Well, he was described as a communist suspect by a chemical engineer in New York, a fellow named Grimes.
Spoken as Grimes?
He's dead.
Oh. Where's Craig now?
Working as a chemist for a hospital in Philadelphia. Before that, he was with the Philadelphia Sugar Company. I've gone over their employment records, and Craig either reported sick or was on vacation on the dates Pinola claims he met the courier.
You interviewed Craig yet?
No, that's where I'm going now. I'm looking for Mr. Craig.
I'm Craig. You waiting for a test?
No, I'm Inspector Young of the FBI. Here are my credentials.
Well, what can I do for you, Mr. Young?
When you find time, I'd like to ask you a few questions.
Why don't we do it now?
Fine.
By the way, what am I charged with?
Well, nothing yet.
I knew I couldn't be. I haven't done anything. Ask me any questions you like.
In questioning a suspect, it sometimes is a better course of action for a special agent to make his first few queries very general, covering vital statistics. Other times, an agent will attempt to employ the element of surprise and make his first question the big one. I showed Craig a picture of Dr. Panola. Is this man familiar?
Of course, that's Dr. Panola.
You know him?
Sure, everybody does after the publicity he got.
Is that why you recognized his picture?
Yes, I saw it often enough in the papers.
Have you ever seen Dr. Panola in person?
No, not that I know of. Why, was he in Philadelphia?
I don't know. Tell me, Mr. Craig, where did you work before you got this job at the hospital?
At a sugar company.
How was your health in those days?
Well, not very good. As a matter of fact, that's why I took this job. I was ill quite a lot at the sugar company. When I took sick leave, they docked me for the days I missed.
Did you go anywhere on those sick leaves?
Oh, sometimes to New York, see a show. Usually I stayed home.
Did you take any trips to New England?
Never been there in my life.
Did you take any vacations while you were at the sugar company?
2 weeks each summer.
Did you spend them taking trips?
No, I'm one of those unusual people, I guess. I just never was bitten by the travel bug. I like it here.
Well, I guess that would mean that you've never been out west, say to New Mexico or California.
I went to Pittsburgh last year to the chemist convention. That's as far west as I've ever gone.
You know many chemists?
Yes, of course.
Did you happen to know a chemical engineer in New York named Grimes?
Grimes, yes. He died last year.
Oh, did he?
Well, at least that's what I heard.
Tell me, would you have any objections to my taking some pictures of you?
Not at all.
But why? Well, we'd like to use them in connection with an investigation.
I see.
You can refuse, of course, to grant permission.
I have no objection.
I brought along a camera, but I'm afraid we don't have enough light in here.
No, I don't.
Can we go outside and take them now?
Try.
At noon, I started to shoot pictures of Craig. By 2:30, the film was delivered to the FBI laboratory in Washington. They were developed immediately and put aboard a plane to Europe. The following day, at the prison where Dr. Panola was in custody, the pictures were shown to him. He leaned forward in his chair and studied the screen intently. Proof that the right man had been found could now be had if Dr. Panola identified Craig. The room was quiet except for the whir of the movie projector. All right, stop. That man is not Christopher. After Dr. Panola's discouraging words, we ran the film again, this time for the doctor's sister in New England. If she could make a definite identification, it would be almost as valuable as Dr. Panola's. She couldn't. In spite of this, we at FBI headquarters were still sure Craig was the man we wanted. I was in my office the following day when... Young.
Hello, Mr. Young. This is Leonard Craig.
Oh, hello. How are you?
Pretty good, thanks. Say, I thought of something after you left.
Oh, yeah? What was that?
Maybe you'd like to look around my room.
Oh, I can't.
Why not?
Well, in order to get a search warrant, I'd have to say what I expected to find in your room.
You don't need a search warrant.
Oh, I do, unless you're willing to give me your permission.
That's why I called.
Will you put that permission in writing?
Of course.
Oh, fine. When can we meet?
I'll be home around 6:30.
I'll be there. That evening, Craig was again as polite and cooperative as possible. He suggested I start with a table beside his bed. That's where he kept a lot of his papers.
If there's anything you don't understand, be glad to explain.
Thank you.
Maybe a few scraps of paper with chemical data. Maybe even I won't understand it now. Oh, that's a chemical journal.
Whenever an item of interest was found, Craig was ready to give an explanation. He was supremely confident.
We seemed to have an answer for every question. We worked our way through each drawer of the table and then around the room to the bookcase. Mind if I look through your books?
Not at all.
Hey, there's something behind them.
Paperback mysteries.
Oh,
I hide them so my friends won't find out I'm not an intellectual.
I see. Wait a minute. Looks like there's something back in the bookcase. You mind if I move it out?
No, not at all.
That'll be enough.
What did you find?
A city map of Santa Fe.
Huh? Maybe whoever had this room before me left it.
You think the former tenant also marked the Castillo Street Bridge on the map?
Well,
you said you never been west of Pittsburgh. Was that true? Mr. Craig, would you like to tell me the whole story?
Tried in federal court, Leonard Craig was sentenced to a long term in a federal penitentiary. And now a word from the star of tonight's program, Mr. George Murphy.
Ladies and gentlemen, I should like to take this opportunity to tell you about one of the most exciting things that has ever happened to me. Last fall, I had the privilege of working in a new motion picture called Walk East on Beacon, a picture adapted from FBI cases, photographed and portrayed as it happened with the complete cooperation of the Federal Bureau of Investigation. This is an important picture for you to see because it shows exactly how the agents of a foreign government operate. It is an exciting picture, and there's a realness and honesty about it that you won't forget. It's a picture that Americans, both old and young, should see. I would like to thank Mr. J. Edgar Hoover for selecting me to play the part of Inspector Bell. It was one of the most exciting experiences of my life. And as for your FBI, ladies and gentlemen, in this troubled world, we should thank God every night for this wonderful group of men. The finest, most efficient, most self-sacrificing, best public servants in the world. As long as we have the FBI, we need not fear for the future of America. I think you will enjoy seeing how they protect you and your country in Walk East on Beacon.
Thank you, Mr. Murphy. Now, if you are interested in planning for future security and peace of mind of yourself and your family, why not talk to the man in your community who can help you most? Your local Equitable Society representative will be glad to discuss your problems with you at any time and without any obligation. Throughout the United States, there are more than 8,000 of these insurance specialists. To get in touch with your local Equitable Society representative, simply consult your local telephone directory. The Equitable Life Assurance Society of the United States.
Next week, we will dramatize another case from the files of the Federal Bureau of Investigation. Its subject, impersonation. Its title, The Punch and Judy Shakedown.
The incidents used in tonight's Equitable Life Assurance Society's broadcast are adapted from the files of the Federal Bureau of Investigation. However, all names used are fictitious. Any similarity thereof to the names of places or persons, living or dead, is accidental. Tonight, George Murphy was starred as Inspector Young. The music was composed and conducted by Frederick Steiner. The author was Jerry D. Lewis. Your narrator was William Woodson, and Special Agent Taylor was played by Stacey Harris. Others in the cast were Whitfield Connor, Ted DeCorsia, Isabel Jewell, and Tom Tully. This Is Your FBI is a Jerry Devine production. This is Larry Keating speaking for the Equitable Life Assurance Society of the United States and the Equitable Society's representative in your community. I'm inviting you to tune in again next week at the same time when the Equitable Life Assurance Society will bring you another thrilling transcribed story from the files of the Federal Bureau of Investigation. The Punch and Judy Shakedown on This Is Your FBI.
Stay tuned for The Aldrich Family next on Theater of the Mind.
I'm Marilyn Weston, and I give it to you straight from a woman's perspective here on Zoomer Radio every Saturday morning at 8. This Saturday, Darren Farwell gives us investment advice. Dr. Betty Rosendahl explains how to deal with fibromyalgia naturally. Dr. Vivian Brown explains sleep and heart connection. Lori Bell of Moving Seniors with a Smile speaks about when letting go feels hard, and more. So join us and be empowered by the experts from a woman's perspective this Saturday morning at 8, exclusively here on Zura Radio.
Concerned about long-term care? With CARP Home Care Assistance from My Dignity, receive your care your way in your home. Benefits can help pay for personal support workers, prepared meals, home conversions, transportation, and more. You decide where and how to spend your money. Take charge of your future with CARP Home Care Assistance at 800-929-6606 or visit yourcareyourway.ca.
A CARP Education Moment.
I'm Bill Van Gorder, Chief Operating Officer for CARP. All those in favor of lower drug prices, raise your hands. But how low is too low? This July, new federal rules come into effect forcing Canadian drug prices lower than those in Mexico. What happens if pharma companies decide to bypass Canada altogether? What if lower prices mean losing access to life-saving medicines, including for serious diseases like cancer? News for you, it's already happening. We wait almost a year and a half longer to get access to new medical treatments in Canada compared to our friends in the US and Europe. But now, the new federal pricing rules coming this summer will make this bad situation even worse. CARP's foot needs to come down on the decision makers in Ottawa while there's still time to save healthcare. All those in favor, then join us at carp.ca/access2meds.
Zoomer. Time now to hear from the Aldridge family and the story of the birthday pipe.
Grape Nuts and Grape Nuts Flakes present
Henry Aldrich. Coming, Mother.
the Aldridge family.
Yum, 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 Grape Nuts Flakes are good by Henry. Sugar roasted, new and better. They're richer now in sweet malt sugar. Sugar roasted, good by Henry. Grape Nuts Flakes, yum, yum, my
The Aldridge family, based on characters originated by Trippz Goldsmith and starring Ezra Stone as Henry with Jackie Kelch as Homer, is brought to you by Grape Nuts and Grape Nuts Flakes.
Hey, I hear there's sugar roasted.
And now for the Aldridge family. A teenage boy may have his ups and downs, but he's never halfway between. Henry Aldrich, for instance, never walks when he can run, and never smiles when he can laugh. And when he's late for dinner, he's good and late. The scene opens at the Aldrich dinner table.
Sam, could I get you another piece of pie?
No, thank you. What time is it now?
It's a little after 6:30, dear.
Oh, yes? Seems to me it was a little after 6:30, half an hour ago.
Why, now that I look again, yes, it's getting on towards 7, but Sam... I'm sure Henry will be home any minute, Father. Why don't you put him right out of your mind? This is just your coffee and newspaper.
Mary, I can think of nothing more enjoyable than being able to put Henry right out of my mind.
After all, dear, he's only a little late, and...
A little late? When we've already finished dinner?
Well, I'm not trying to defend him, but we did eat quickly. And my goodness, Father, Henry was much later than this the night before last, and you didn't say a thing.
Exactly. He's been late for dinner 3 days in a row, and he's late for breakfast every day. It's time I put my foot down.
Well, the other thing is... Dear, don't think I'm criticizing, but couldn't you just put your foot down gently all the time instead of standing it down only every once in a while and scaring us all to death?
Are you insinuating that I'm not a good father?
Why, no, dear. My goodness, of course you're a good father, Father. Of course you are, dear. But won't you let me handle Henry this once?
You've been handling Henry too long as it is.
Sam, are you insinuating that I'm not a good mother? My goodness, Father, look out the window. Here he comes.
Where?
See, he's coming up the street, pulling a wagon.
Yes. What time is it?
It's a little after 6:30, Sam.
Look at him.
ambling along as though he had all the time in the world.
Well, yes,
What has he got on that wagon?
it looks like pop bottles.
Now, what's he stopping for?
He's probably tying his shoelace.
He's picking a bottle up out of the gutter. Look at him standing there looking at it.
It's all right, Sam. He's putting it back in the gutter. Mother, do you think I should go out and tell him to hurry?
You stay where you are, Mary. This is very interesting. Look at that.
But then what's wrong with stopping to pat a dog? Look, isn't that thoughtful of him? He's offering the dog his candy. Only it won't take it.
I dare say the dog knew enough to go home in time to get his dinner.
Mother, hello. I know, dear.
Henry, come in here.
Would you let him eat first, Father, before we scold him? Hello, everybody. Is dinner ready yet? Boy, I'm starved. I'll go and heat something up.
Alice, stay here.
What's that? Boy, what a time I've been having. Father, are you going to get a surprise?
Henry, are you going to get a surprise? Henry, do you realize what time it is?
Why?
You've been eating your meals here for a good many years now, and you're aware of the fact that your mother serves dinner promptly at 6 o'clock.
You mean it isn't 6 o'clock yet? Then, why don't you buy him a watch?
Henry, according to your mother, it's a little after 6:30.
It is? Oh, gee whiz, I have to be someplace at 7:30. I'll have to eat dinner in a hurry.
If you'd been interested in dinner, you would have been here at 6 o'clock. Now, please go to your room.
You mean I'm going to eat dinner in my room?
I mean, son, you're not going to eat dinner at all.
Sam, you mean you weighed everything up?
Henry, stop arguing and go up to your room.
Sure, Father. Well, that's perfectly all right. I'm not hungry anyway. So, supposing I go and sit in my room until 7:15.
You will sit in your room until I tell you to come out.
But, Father, I have to be someplace at 7:30.
When you were rummaging around the street picking up bottles, did it occur to you that you had to be someplace at 6 o'clock?
Father, I wasn't...
Now, look, I told you to do something.
But, Father...
Henry!
Yes, Father. And I hope you enjoyed your dinner. That roast beef certainly smells good. Sam Ogre, you ought to be ashamed of yourself.
Ashamed? What should I be? As a matter of fact, Alice, I believe I will have that piece of pie now.
Yes? Well, you'll find it in the kitchen. All right, Mother. The coast is clear. You go on downstairs, Mary, and be on the lookout for your father. As soon as I get this sandwich into Henry, I'll come down, too. All right, Mother. Henry? Oh, Henry? Yes, Mother?
Alice?
Oh, dear.
Alice, what on earth are you doing?
Oh, you're standing here, eating a sandwich here.
Yeah?
Would you like a bite?
No, thank you, Alice. I just finished my dinner.
Mother, what did you call me for? I didn't call you Henry. Are you eating something, Mother? Yes, a sandwich. Is it good? Yes. It's delicious. Hey, Henry.
Come along, Alice.
Henry's up here in his room, Homer. He finished his dinner, Mrs. Aldrich. No, he hasn't. Homer, don't mention food to it. Why not? Hey, Henry, are you in here? Yeah. Well, hi. Hi. Gee, does that roast beef you had for dinner smell good? Boy, my one big chance to earn that pipe I've been wanting at the Havens drugstore. A pipe, too? Yeah, and I have to stay here in my room. Gee whiz, you think I'm old enough to smoke a pipe, too? It isn't for me, it's for my father's birthday next week. Oh, well, I guess he's old enough. Gee whiz, Mr. DeHaven gave me a job to do, and all I have to do is have it done by 9 o'clock tonight, and he'll pay me the pipe. So what's the job, Henry? Is it mixing sodas? Maybe I could do it for you, if it's mixing sodas. Boy, Homer, would you? You see the small pile of overdue bills? All you have to do is go around and collect them all by 9 o'clock. Oh. Well, I don't think I'd be any good at collecting money. Sure you would, Homer. Henry, just before I came over here, I tried to collect an advance on next week's allowance from my father. And boy, you just weren't persistent enough. Oh, yeah? I was so persistent, I'm not going to get any allowance at all. But look, Homer, I've already collected 5 bills, and that's not counting Mrs. Clark, who paid me off with a wagon load of ginger ale bottles. Well, I'd like to, Henry, only my doctor says I have to take it easy. Okay, that's all right, Homer. Naturally, I can't force you to help me.
And will you please stop swinging on my bedpost?
Well, I won't hurt myself, Henry. I've been doing this since I was a kid, and I've never fallen yet. Ouch.
Boy.
I did that on purpose.
Henry, stop that racket! Now look what you did, Homer. My father thought that was me. He thought...
Henry, you're choking me.
Homer, my father thought you were me. Don't you realize what that means?
It means he's crazy, and let go.
Well, listen, Homer, if you were to stay here in my room for an hour or so, see, and move around from time to time...
Oh, no, Henry, oh, no.
Homer, who knows the difference? I could get out the back way and collect those bills, and all you'll have to do is sit here.
But, Henry, my doctor says I should be out getting some exercise.
Yes?
Good evening, Mr. Collins.
Oh, is that Henry Ulrich?
Yes, sir. Gee, how are you anyway, sir?
I'm fine, thank you.
And Mrs. Collins?
She's fine, thank you.
And the children?
What children?
Oh. Well, speaking of children, Mr. Collins, you bought some ice cream and stuff from Mr. DeHaven last October.
Yeah, I don't remember that.
About $2 worth.
About $2 worth?
Well, to be more exact, exactly $2 worth. Here's the bill, Mr. Collins.
Go ahead.
I guess it must have slipped your mind.
The only thing is, Henry, I'm a little short tonight. But look, do you know Mr. Dixon over at 23 Maple Street?
I don't think so.
He owes me $2.50. So you go on over there and collect from him and say I sent you.
$2.50?
And you just give me 50 cents.
Oh, gee whiz, the only thing is I haven't much time. I sort of have a friend sitting in for me at home. I mean, well, are you sure I'll be able to collect from Mr. Dixon?
Sure thing.
Well, here's your 50 cents, but gee, I sure...
And Henry, when you get back to the drugstore, will you tell the Haven to send me up a carton of cigarettes?
Sure. Would you like to pay me for them now?
No, just tell him to charge it.
Look, are you sure Mr. Dixon isn't home at all?
No, and I can't stand here in the doorway and talk to him. I have to go in the ice cream girl.
But look, it's only $2.50.
Well, come on in the house for a minute. Can I look in my purse? Yes, here you are.
Gee, thanks.
Young man, do you know any high school girls? Oh, my goodness. What's the matter with you?
What's that?
Of course. You do. I just have to go out for an hour, and the baby just never wakes up once she gets to sleep.
The baby?
Yes, and if she does, you can find a bottle in the laptop.
Hey, wait, I have too many bottles now.
Now, there's my phone.
And Mrs. Dixon, I can't stay with your baby. I have to get back to Homer.
I won't be long. Her name's Diane.
Diane? But what about Homer?
Henry.
Oh, boy.
Henry.
Where will I hide? Where will I hide?
Now, Henry, I didn't say you'd have to go to bed. You might as well get up. I know you're not asleep with those covers over your head. You know, son, the family seems to think I've been pretty hard on you, sending you up here without for dinner, but I did it for your own good. You realize that, don't you? Henry? Henry, answer me. No, there's no need to cry, Henry. Look, son, I don't like to have to punish you. This being late for meals might be only a stage you're going through, but sometimes you just don't seem to be our son at all. I don't like to criticize your friends, Henry, but I sometimes wonder if you're not seeing too much of Homer Brown. What? Henry, you sound as though you're suffocating. Well, we won't talk about it anymore. Here, son, I brought you a piece of pie. Now, see here, Henry, don't just stick your hand out from under the covers. Come on out and get it.
Oh, boy.
Now, look, that's enough fooling around. Come on. Henry, let go of those covers. What got into you? There.
Hello, Mr. Aldrich. What are you doing here?
Hello? Hello, is that Mr. Foster? Well, my name is Henry Aldridge, and did you know you owe Mr. DeHaven $7.36 from last July? You'll pay it? Well, there's only one other thing. Would you consider coming over here to 23 Maple Street with us? I have to stay here with a baby, seeing. But Mr. Foster, all the other customers are doing it. Well, some of them are. Well, one of them is Mr. Foster. Boy, that's a fine thing. Good evening.
Good evening. Are you the boy from DeHaven?
Yes, sir. You must be Mr. Wright.
That's right.
Boy, come on in. I sure appreciate your coming over here.
Now, how much did you say my bill was?
67 cents.
Very well. Here you are.
Thanks. Oh, gee, I can't change $10. Would you mind just giving me the 60 cents in cents?
I'm sorry, young man, but this is the smallest I have.
Well, look, why don't I do this? Why don't I run down to a store and get it changed?
Well,
and you can stay with the baby.
What baby?
Diane. You won't have a bit of trouble. She just never wakes up once she gets to sleep. And then she does. You'll find the bottle in the ice.
Dear me, Mr. Weeks, what a predicament.
Oh, come now, Mr. Wright, taking care of a sleeping baby? Well, there's nothing to it.
If the baby wakes up and starts crying, would you know what to do?
Would I? Now, just you listen to this.
Yum, 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 my lemonade. Great nuts, flakes are good by the minute. Sugar roasted, new and better. They're richer now in sweet small sugar. Sugar roasted, good by the minute. Great nuts, flakes, yum, yum, my lemonade.
Yes, even a baby will start smiling when it hears that happy tune. And it's nothing like the smile you'll see when sugar-roasted Grape Nuts Flakes are served. That wonderful sugar-roasted flavor just hits the right spot. And remember, this one delicious flavor comes in two delicious forms. Grape Nuts, crisp, crunchy kernels, and Grape Nuts Flakes, tempting, toasty brown flakes. That's Grape Nuts and Grape Nut Flakes. They're sugar-roasted. And now, getting back to the troubles of Henry Aldrich. When Henry arrived home late for dinner, Mr. Aldrich felt he should be punished. But the reason for Henry's lateness was that he was trying to earn a fight for his father's birthday present. The scene opened under a streetlight on Centerville's Main Street.
Oh, boy. Hey, Mister, could you give me a hand here?
Henry!
Oh, boy. Father, is that you?
How long did you think you could point Homer off on me?
But, Father...
What on earth are you doing lying on your face on the sidewalk?
Well, I have to get my face right down on this grating to see where my $10 is.
What $10?
The one down in this hole. Father, under the grating, it flew out of my hand.
Do you realize that you disobeyed me? Do you realize I have been combing this town for you?
Sure, Father, but I can explain everything.
Get up.
Yes, sir. You see, there was this thing I wanted, only I can't tell you what it is. And I just had to collect some bills, only I got held up with this baby, see?
A baby owes you a bill?
No, Father, it was her father. Well, he didn't owe it to me. He owed it to another man, and I gave him 50 cents because it was a bill from last October.
Henry, are you trying to tell me that you owe somebody 50 cents since last October? After all the times I told you never to borrow money?
No, Father, I just borrowed the baby, and then it fell down this grating.
What?
But not the baby, the $10. Oh, boy. But, Father, just let me explain one thing to you.
Henry, let me explain one thing to you. You want to march right straight home and go up to your room and stay there. Do you understand?
But, Father, that $10 belongs to a man over at 23 Maple Street.
I'll get the $10 out of here. All I have to do is reach in for it. Now go on home.
Yes, Father, I'm going.
Don't stop to talk to anybody, and don't come back.
Yes.
Now then, I can just get my arm. Henry, my arm is caught in the grating. Henry, come back!
Mother, You mean you really do? Of course, Henry. I follow you perfectly. Well, gee whiz, how is it I can always make you understand? Father always gets me mixed up. Oh, it's very clear to me, dear. You've had a date since last October to mine Mr. Dixon's payday. What? And he said he'd give you his best pipe that he found down underneath a grating if you'd collect $10 that Mr. DeHaven owed him for some bottles. No, Mother. I guess you didn't understand. Now, Henry, didn't you say you wanted to get a pipe as a present for your father? Yeah, sure. Gee, if I made that clear, that's all that matters. For Father's Day. No, for Father's birthday. Oh. I'm in the living room, Homer, with my mother.
All the boy, your father caught me in your room, and boy, it's a good thing I found you before he did.
Homer, you're too late.
No, I'm not, and I've got it all figured out. You can hide in my basement for the next few days.
Now, Homer, he isn't going to do any such thing. His father said he was to go straight to his room. But, Mother, I just had to collect 6 more of these bills before 9 o'clock. Wouldn't you consider letting me go out for only half an hour? No, dear. Your father's going around saying that I spoiled you. Look, Mother, do you suppose there's a way that I could collect the money and still not leave my room at all?
Wait a minute. Now, Mr. Aldrich, for the last time, if you don't stay down on your knees, there's nothing I can do for you. How long do you think I can hold this position? My back's nearly broken. Well, you're going to get your arm broken if you don't hold it. Well, then kindly hurry up. You realize I had to walk 6 blocks with this grate on my arm? Yes, Mr. Aldrich. But I can't say I like your attitude. Do you realize I closed this hardware store 2 hours ago and I came from clear across town to help you? Yes, of course, I didn't need. And I'm doing the very best I can. I realize that, Mr. Jackson, and I appreciate it very much. All right. Now, see if you can hold still. Very well, Mr. Aldrich. If that's your attitude, you can go straight to the blacksmith.
Hello, Mrs. Walker. This is Alice Aldrich. I just thought I'd phone and give you that chocolate cake recipe you've been wanting. Well, yes, it's always been a family secret, but I just decided there's no point in being selfish about it. Oh, and by the way, Mrs. Walker, did you know you owe the Havens Drugstore $9.13? Yes, of course you've forgotten about it, dear. Supposing I send Homer Brown over to pick it up. And then he'll be glad to give you the recipe. Hello? Hello, are you still there, Doris? Well, I know I'm not home. I'm sitting here in some stranger's house minding a baby. No, dear, a baby. I know, dear, but listen. I gave a young boy $10 and he was going to change it. No, dear, change the $10. Oh, but dear, you don't understand. Dear? Goodbye, dear. Excuse me, is your name right? Yes, are you the father? Why, yes. Well, I'm certainly glad you're here. Come on in. Thank you. Just a minute now. If I can manage to get my billfold out. I noticed your arm is in a sling. Were you in an accident? Yes. Here's your $10. Thank you. I'll just get my coat out. Hey, wait a minute. Where did you get the $10? Look, I'm trying to forget. Kindly take the money and let's not talk about it. Well, that suits me. I'll drop into the Havens and pay that bill on my way home. Good evening. Oh, here, wait. I'm leaving too. Oh, no, you can't. Your wife isn't home. Oh. You'll have to stay with the baby. Oh. Good evening. Good evening. Mr. Wright. Wait a minute. What baby? Henry, what time is it? It's just a little after 9 o'clock, Mother. Henry, it must be an hour since you said it was only a little before 9 o'clock. Gee, I'm sure Father will be home any minute. After all, he's only 2 hours late.
Oh, let's see that pipe again, Henry.
Here.
Boy, isn't it a beauty?
I'll say.
And was Mr. DeHaven surprised when I took in all the money?
Yeah?
He said to tell you you were the best bill collector he ever had.
Gee, Mother, and to think that chocolate cake has been a family secret for generations.
Henry?
Yes, Mary?
I have the tissue paper out here in the kitchen. Do you want to wrap Father's pie?
Sure, Mary. Can we do it up real fancy? Why?
You better step on it, Hen, so your father doesn't see it.
Oh, well, what time is it now? Sam. Oh, boy, I'm going home. Good night, Mrs. Aldrich.
Are you ready to let me know about it?
Sam Aldrich, where have you been?
Alice, I can explain everything.
Oh, my goodness, you're on. You've been in an accident.
No, Alice, this wouldn't have happened if Mr. Jackson hadn't lost his temper. All I said was out. He'd say out too if I was twisting his arm off.
So that's it, you've been fighting?
Fighting?
At your age.
Listen to me, Alice. This $10 bill fell down a grating, and I got my arm caught in it trying to reach the money.
Was Mr. Jackson trying to reach the money, too?
No, dear. I had to lift the whole grating off with my arm still in it, and then I had to get down into the hole and get the $10.
You mean Mr. Jackson pushed you in?
No, I got in by myself.
And Mr. Jackson wouldn't let you out?
Alice, forget about Mr. Jackson.
Well, my goodness, you need to yell. Frankly, if that's the way you were, I don't blame him for hitting you.
Alice, listen. Mr. Jackson did not hit me. Mr. Jackson didn't do a thing except bite my head off.
Then why are you so late?
Because I've been minding the baby.
What baby?
Well, you see, I went, Mr. Never mind, you wouldn't believe it anyway.
Mother, have you got a longer piece of ribbon I could tie around the...
Henry, aren't you wish? Why aren't you in your room?
Oh, I'm going, Father, but do you mind my asking what happened to your arm? Mr. Jackson did it there.
Henry, wait a minute. What's that you're holding behind your back?
Oh, boy. Oh, it isn't anything, Father. Just some tissue paper.
Yes, in that case, let me have it, please.
Sam, Father, couldn't you just wait a day or so? I mean...
Hand it over.
Yes.
What's in here, another pop bottle?
No, sir, it's...
Well...
Happy birthday, Father. Only I certainly hadn't planned it this way.
You mean this pipe is...
It's your birthday present, Sam.
It is? For my birthday?
And Henry earned it himself, collecting bills. That's why he left his room, and incidentally why he was late for dinner.
Oh. Well, you see, Alice, it's a pipe. Well, it's about the best-looking one I've ever seen.
Boy, Father, do you really like it?
Yes, indeed, Henry. Well, thank you, son.
He earned it, Sam.
Yes, Alice, I know. Well, Henry, so you earned it.
Yes, sir.
Wow.
And you know the next thing I'm going to earn, Father? A watch, so I won't ever be late for dinner again.
Well, son, you couldn't help being late. Sometimes things happen, Henry, that are beyond our control.
But just the same, Father, it's not going to happen again. You see this stack of bills?
Yes.
Mr. DeHaven sent them up here with Homer. He said if I can do as good a job collecting these, he'll pay me a watch.
Well, I think that's very commendable, Henry. When do you start?
Right now. Father, did you know you owe Mr. DeHaven $12.25 from before Christmas?
Hey, Mr. Weeds, I knew a character who prided himself on never being late except once.
Well, what happened that time, Mr. Trippz?
Well, this character sets out for his own wedding 240 miles upstate, but along comes a blizzard and stops the train. So he hires a horse and sleigh, but the horse gives up, climbs up into the sleigh, and goes sound asleep.
No.
Yes. So next he gets the sled and the dog team, but the dogs wear out and give up. So then my friend gets out his skis, tugs 3 dogs under each arm, and mushes all the way to the church just in time to prevent the best man from eloping with his girl.
Man, what energy. Why, he must have been eating grape nuts.
He was. He told me. Them sugar-roasted grape nuts. Any objections?
Nary a one, Mr. Trippz.
I like a little mushing myself.
And friends, while you may not want to plow through blizzards, it's great to have the energy so you plow through the day's work like lightning. And it is grape nuts for energy. Grape nuts for important bodybuilding food values of the whole grain. And don't forget, this one delicious flavor comes in 2 delicious forms. Grape nuts, crisp, crunchy kernels, and grape nut flakes, tempting toasty brown flakes. They're both sugar-roasted, crisply toasted, naturally nourishing.
Do you love all of those, Sam?
Yes, dear. What a day.
Oh, my goodness, where did you get this?
What?
This great big handkerchief.
Alice, that isn't a handkerchief, and I'll have to return it to Diane tomorrow.
Who's Diane?
Well, you see, Alice, it's...
Rich Family was written by Jack Miller is based on characters written by Trippz and stars Ezra Stoller as Henry with Jackie Cook as Homer. Mr. and Mrs. Ulrich are House Davidson and Catherine Watt. And this is Dwight Reed saying the Aldrich Family was brought to you by Grape Nuts and Grape Nut Flakes. They're sugar roasted. This will be again next week, same time, same station, to another sparkling half hour with the Aldrich Family. This is NBC, the National Broadcasting Company.
Thank you for listening. Tomorrow night, it's the Green Hornet, followed by the Fred Allen Show. Thanks to Paul Stringer and Joel Schoenwald for technical support. The executive producer for Theater of the Mind is Moses Lammer. Stay tuned for Ziggy and Stardust, next on Zoomer Radio. I'm Frank Proctor. Have a great night.
This is Zoomer Radio Toronto, CFZM FM and CFZM AM, owned and operated by NZ Media Incorporated.
And now the purple dusk of twilight time steals across the meadows of my heart. High up in the sky, the little stars twine.
That's what that Aldrich family was done, but whatever.
DeLorme says it's not a mass grave, and at one point there were individual markers at the burial sites, but Catholic Church officials removed them in the 1960s. DeLorme says it was a criminal act, and the area is being treated as a crime scene. Now he's calling on the Pope to apologize. Ryan Kessler, Global News, Saskatchewan.
Reaction is pouring in following the tragic discovery. Speaking with Global News, Heather Baer, Vice Chief of the Federation of Sovereign Indigenous Nations and survivor of the Maryville Residential School, outlines what happened within the school system and the terrible decision Indigenous parents had to make.
They were quiet whispers about the sexual abuse, mental, physical, the language being stripped away, but everything was always kept so quiet. And if you were a parent that had a child, didn't want your child to go to school if you didn't let them go, well, you were put in jail. Can you imagine?
Baer believes the biggest challenge going forward will be for non-First Nations people to stand up and speak out about the injustice. A member of the Nova Scotia Progressive Conservative Party has been dropped from the caucus after she posted a video on Facebook supporting a protest that closed the boundary between Nova Scotia and New Brunswick.
Party leader Tim Houston has also banned Elizabeth Smith McCrossin from running for the Tories in the future after she posted an angry video to Facebook late Tuesday. The video warned that unless the border restrictions were changed, she would join with residents of her constituency near the New Brunswick border who had had enough and would be shutting down the Trans-Canada Highway. Houston says he appreciates her frustration over last-minute changes. However, he said Smith McCrossin's failure to accept accountability for her post showed a lack of judgment and personal responsibility. Keith Doucette, The Canadian Press, Halifax.
An Associated Press analysis shows a staggering demonstration of how effective COVID-19 vaccines have been in preventing deaths in the U.S.
An analysis of CDC data from last month reveals nearly all COVID-19 deaths in the U.S. now are among unvaccinated people. There were 18,000 deaths in May and just 150 among those fully vaccinated. It's an indication daily deaths, which now average below 300, could be practically
I was
zero.
saying 75, 150 in May.
Nearly every death, especially among adults due to COVID-19, is at this point entirely preventable.
While CDC Chief Rochelle Walensky this week called the deaths particularly tragic, the agency itself is not estimating what percentage of deaths are in fully vaccinated people, citing limitations on data from some states that probably understate so-called breakthrough infections. Sagar Magani, Washington.
At least one person is dead, and residents are telling dramatic stories of survival after a 12-story beachfront condo partly...
groups in Canada say at least 600 bodies have been found at the site of a former residential school.
Everything from if the rest of those buildings have to be evacuated as well, finding housing for those people, making sure they have the capacity to both have a place to shelter and food to eat, etc.
Rescuers were able to pull dozens of survivors out, and nearly 100 people are still unaccounted for as of midday. But officials say they don't know yet how many were in the building when it fell, and the cause of the collapse is still unknown at this stage. U.S. House of Representatives Speaker Nancy Pelosi has announced a select committee to investigate the January 6th attack on the U.S. Capitol.
It's imperative that we establish the truth of that day and ensure that an attack of that kind cannot happen, and that we root out the causes of it all.
Last month, Senate Republicans blocked legislation to set up an independent bipartisan committee, saying existing probes made it unnecessary. 7 people died after former President Donald Trump supporters stormed the U.S. Capitol in January. The Justice Department says about 500 people have now been arrested in the sweeping federal investigation into that violence.
How many of them are on
Leaders
bail?
of Indigenous groups in Canada say at least 600 bodies have been found at the site of a former residential school for Indigenous children. The bodies were discovered by investigators at the Marival Indian Residential School east of Regina, the capital of Saskatchewan. Chief Cadmus Delorme of the Cowessess First Nation says a search with ground-penetrating radar led to the discovery of the unmarked graves.
The machine has a 10 to 15% error percentage. So we will only go by the hits that we have of 751, but we do know there's at least 600. You're going to notice that they are in proper order. These that lay here are 1 meter by 1 meter apart in some cases. We cannot affirm that they are all children.
The discovery at the school comes after last month's report of 215 bodies of children found at another school near Kamloops in British Columbia. More than 150,000 Indigenous children were forced to attend state-funded Christian schools, many run by the Roman Catholic Church, from the 19th century until the 1970s. The Canadian government admitted that the abuse was rampant in the schools, which were run in a campaign to assimilate children into Canadian society. And that's the news. I'm Shane Vick.
Hello and welcome to Global Business here on CGTN. I'm Lulu Ingbeidi. Coming up in the next hour, Chinese President Xi Jinping has called for closer cooperation among participants in the Belt and Road Initiative. His written remarks.
Just searching for studio plus with a space in between if you are interested in our topic, or if you want to voice your
Yeah, you're talking about nanobots and shit in between
anybody
Coldplay.
who took part in any of the Truth and Reconciliation hearings, anybody who even took a cursory look at the report of the TRC, this should be no surprise. But I think it is human nature to read a report and see in an estimate that 3,000, 4,000 children may have died. It's a statistic, it's a number. Somehow, these reports of finding actual bodies hit people differently. They have a different emotional and intellectual reaction. And I think for all the reports and all the studies and all the witness testimony, there is something. I mean, you and I both are Jewish family backgrounds. So, you know, it's when you have the actual evidence before you and you can't deny it and you can't look away, it changes perspective. So, you know, it hasn't changed my view of Canada, but it has changed my view of what we need to do going forward, not just to acknowledge the sins of the past, but to ask ourselves, what are we doing for Indigenous families in the present? I mean, you know, you and I spoke in the past about all of my investigative journalism into the failures of Alberta's child welfare system, where, you know, the vast majority of the kids in care are Indigenous. The vast majority of the kids who have died in care have been Indigenous. And, you know, I almost worry that by focusing so much attention on residential schools, we can almost evade our current responsibilities and say, well, those, that was the bad people who did that in the past. Let's not try to pretend that these problems are all fixed. The legacy of residential schools haunts us still, and the legacy of residential schools underpins the paradigm of our current child welfare system.
We don't have a child welfare system. We have a whole bunch of private corporations.
Yeah, we need to be very honest about the colonial roots of this country. And people like you and I, whose families came here seeking refuge, who came as my mom came as a refugee, your parents came as refugees. I will never cease to be grateful for the Canada that gave my parents and grandparents a refuge and a place to live and a future. I'll never cease to be grateful for the country that let me, the daughter of a refugee, have the kind of education that I had and the kind of career that I had, and ultimately put me in the Senate. But I think those of us who came, long after the first waves of settlement need to acknowledge
single game betting.
We are still settlers on this land, and we would not
no. We are not. You almost got me telling the stories of my grandparents coming in here.
Not cleared the land
I knew you were going to say
of its original indigenous inhabitants. A combination of infectious disease and policies of starvation, the destruction of the bison herds, the pushing of people into small reserves that couldn't support them. This is the country that I inherit, and it's part of my job as a senator.
You said you're completely 100% immigrant family. Okay.
You can't have reconciliation
We're
without
not.
truth. But first we need to acknowledge what happened in residential schools and not shy away from it. And I think this is the moment when Canadians can no longer look away. But it doesn't mean that we should say, well, that was in the past.
You're a senator, and it's your responsibility to do exactly what you're doing. And I'm a national commentator, and it's my responsibility to respond to the issues. And I love this country. I take no backseat to anybody. This is our promised land, and I've said it thousands of times to you and to others. However, when I
promise it. Who promised it to you?
More and more,
Oh, Yahweh,
that must have
because
been
we're
like
chosen.
when someone is knocking on the door representing Canada, and then taking your children away. As someone who is the son of a mother who was only 9 years old when someone came to the door, knocked on the door, and took her mother away. Paula Simons, it's impossible for me not to feel what I'm feeling.
Yeah. No, I mean, it is our national shame. It is our national shame. And the real shame of it is that we have known this a long time. I mean, I think I wrote my first story on residential schools in the 1980s. This is not new information, but I think it speaks to the nature of the human heart, the nature of the human soul, that until you can tell people there are 750 children buried here, suddenly we can picture that. Suddenly we can imagine that in a way that you can't imagine thousands. It makes it so concrete, and I think.
Well, that's because you're white. White people think backwards with everything, including math.
I was speaking to a group of students' union leaders from across Alberta, representatives of colleges and polytechnics. And I said to them, it's easy to look at the news today and feel hopeless. I actually look at this news and I feel hopeful because we've known this for years. We've known this for decades. We just pretended we didn't know it. And now we have to stop pretending. And I think that as stark and horrifying as these stories are, that this is what we need to have happen. This is the moment of reckoning we need to have. And if it's taken
what
us
is
this
what we
long
need to have?
with
What
our
are you
national
talking
shame,
about?
that I don't
You
think
sound like sociopaths trying to talk their way out on parole.
I don't feel any more angry about Canada tonight or any more hopeless about Canada tonight.
Jesus
I actually
saved
feel
you.
like this is the turning point, that this is where the narrative changes, that maybe this is the wake-up call that takes us to a different place.
Yeah, just go somewhere else. That's what we've been saying.
Because the speech that you made, a lot of it devoted to outlawing conversion therapy. That's the side that you took. That's the side that's passing. I want to just take a brief break here and then come back with how you made that story highly personal. And I think that you ended up responding publicly in a way that might have been not exactly the way you thought. I saw some surprise in your own face and a lot of emotion, but I just want to leave it there for now and discuss with you what the issue is and what your response was and why you made it personal in a moment, right here on Charles Adler Tonight.
Hospital emergency call. Call 911 to understand what you need to be at last a pro. I don't want to hurt people anymore. I want to help them. Knowing where you stand, where you fit in.
Oh.
City. What was your mission there? It must have been something really exciting, I guess.
Yes, definitely. Indeed. I'm so proud of China's space technology. Like earlier this year, I went to Fujian City to witness a rocket launch, and I was so touched by the spirit of China's aerospace people. Last week, during the road trip, I came back to Fujian again and filled with joy by the news of the successful launch of Shenzhou 12 manned spaceship. And it is the first time ever for Chinese astronauts to enter into our own space stations. And I think that is a good call on peaceful use of the space with the international community. And the reason why,
except for China, because they're not allowed,
because that there's a nearby city called Xinjiang where there's a Mars base. Can you imagine that?
Wow, sounds really exciting.
Yes. So basically, it can provide a simulated environment of the real Mars base. I mean, the land of the Gobi Desert looks a lot like that on Mars. So we launched a surprising challenge, living on Mars for a day.
I know what your Mars base is going to look like from the inside.
YouTuber. And have you ever watched the movie Martian by Matt Damon?
Well, that was one of my favorite movies.
Really?
I love all the scenes there.
Yeah, it's so exciting. We actually plant the potatoes like him in the Mars base based in the Xinjiang city of the Gansu province.
You did?
Yes. And we try to eat some high-protein worms. And we also try to use the three-color lighting to stimulate the sunlight so that the photosynthesis will make the plants absorb the carbon dioxide and release fresh oxygen. And in theory, such carbon can provide most the oxygen for 5 astronauts living in the base. And we also carry some outdoor missions, and we wear some extremely heavy helmets and, blow off the dust on the solar panels and to carry out some missions like that. And we also do some exercises, as Mars only has about 1/3 of the gravity comparing to Earth. So with no effort to doing things, muscles will shrink. So keep exercising is kind of very important for men living in space. But the most importantly, why Mars? And according to our one-day challenge on the Mars base in Xinjiang City, I got a knowledge that Mars has underground water resources, it has the atmosphere, it has 4 seasons, and lots of carbon dioxide, which can be transferred into oxygen. So if some human beings want to be like a multi-planet civilization, Mars would be a fine choice. So I think that is a very exciting trip and a very exciting adventure in the Fujian City and Xinjiang City.
Right, I can see that. You did have a very exciting day. I can't imagine myself eating worms or doing some sort of exercise, a physical exercise, donning those very heavy space suit. I guess that must have been some very special experience. It sounds to me like a real science class. Well, I can't envy you more, but let's move on to my next area of interest, and that is yesterday you told me that you've seen something that looks very much like it's from a science fiction movie in the Gobi Desert, and it can generate clean energy. What is it? Do tell us now.
Yes, indeed. During the road trip from Sichuan to Dunhuang, there was a very surrealistic tall tower with a tremendous halo, like the eyes of the sky. So it is a solar thermal factory with a 261-meter tall tower and a 420,000 of mirrors. So basically, it is like say goodbye to the polluting energy like fossil oil. China's scientists are turning to the future, the clean energy from unlimited power source, the sun. So across China, nearly 10 trillion kilowatts of solar power heats the land every second. And that is a huge pool of energy treasure. And that is more than 3,000 times the output of all the power plants in the world. So can you imagine that? With an installed capacity of 100 megawatts, an 11-hour modern storage.
The question, because there really is no such thing. I mean, it's not like outlawing having your wisdom teeth removed. I mean, there is no such thing as conversion therapy. It's a bunch of hooey. It's quackery and witch doctoring and people who think that you can pray the gay away or use aversion therapy to make someone straight. So it's a noxious thing. And what SICKLY does is to say that no parent can force a child under 18 to undergo conversion therapy. No parent can take a child out of the country so that they have conversion therapy in the United States or in some other country. And no person can advertise conversion therapy for sale. So you can't put yourself out there as a counselor and say, I offer conversion therapy and make money. You can't monetize homophobia. And so for me, so much of the hysteria around this bill is just false. And I received hundreds and hundreds of emails from people saying,
I could sell
if this happens, I can't be a Christian anymore. If this happens, you know, as soon as my child says that they think they might be trans, I'm going to go to jail if I don't instantly get some hormone replacement. There was just so much bad information. And I looked at these letters and I thought, okay, a lot of these parents are angry and scared, and they, you know, and they don't want to face up to the fact that their child is gay or trans. They want to put back the clock to when they thought their child was just like everybody else. And I thought, you know what? It is really easy for me to be judgmental, except that then I would be a hypocrite because, as I explained in my speech in the Senate yesterday, despite the fact that I had spent an entire career making a name for myself as a champion of LGBTQ rights, when my own daughter came to me 4 years ago when she was 20 and told me that she was gay, I had a reaction like a bad mother in a bad sitcom, in which I actually said things like, look, maybe you just have to meet the right boy, or, you know, maybe you're just bisexual. You know, I was like a caricature. And I thought to myself, you know, I don't want to make a speech in the Senate.
Thanks for normalizing that.
Lecture other
Thanks for normalizing it so we can continue on.
Without acknowledging my own flaws and my own.
They'll say, oh, I did the same thing everybody else does. You know, everybody else doesn't do that.
To rebuild my relationship. What
was the Chin's talking about again? Space technology and sodium.